Happy Holy Day, Moors, and welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight we are pleased. We've had a couple of weeks off, but we are excited once again to have back with us our National Grand Chief, Tarik.
Thank you for being here. Interesting thing, Mustafa had called me earlier past week or so, and he brought the subject matter. And the interesting thing was, because I was going through my old notes, some of the unpublished parts of the identity crisis. And that's what I was planning on doing today, and he brought that up. It was like apropos. So I had called in on his radio show, and we went over that, so all we're doing is continuing what we were doing. Now, how many of you are familiar with the Special Committee of 24 Decolonization, 1960? Any of you familiar with that? You familiar with it?
I kind of looked at it.
Give her the mic, because I want you. Because these things need to be discussed.
No.
What do you mean? No, she didn't want to share. You're working with them. You know, you can tell them things are good because they don't do the ordinary. They do it. You know it's good. So I'm not going to reject it. No, show them how you were working it over there.
Islam.
You know it tastes good then.
Yes.
It wasn't the ordinary. It was,
You're welcome.
you know, the eyebrows rise, tasty. Anyway, Special Committee of 24 is representative of nation states on the planet Earth who are dealing with the issue of decolonization, of which the United States is one of the major targets for decolonization. Though a lot of emphasis was placed on a lot of other countries, because most of the other countries, even though most of your nation states on the planet, in fact, are no more than 125 years to 200 years old. Are we clear? So if you're looking at the old world, most of the nation states that you recognize today didn't really exist. Are we clear? Nevertheless, with decolonization, most of the people who have limited understanding of the politics of the planet think that the United States is a country, which it is not. And plus, the United States is a political metaphor. So take some notes, because what we're going to do is present certain general facts that you need to be in your concept of mind to deal with these matters. Because actually, the point that I'm making is this. Although the nations of the world have been dealing with decolonization, there has been really limited effort to execute it. Are we clear? Are we clear? And then there's been counter moves by the triad of the Vatican, Britain, the UK, and the U.S. Britain colonies, which is called the United States, that's occupying North America. And you already know that most people who really don't understand the politics are not aware that the United States that they've been assuming is the governing nation state at Central North America is a colony operation. Not that they don't know the history that it originated from colonization. they're not aware that it still is exactly that. But in the nature of its operative existence, the people have become used to using the phrase United States as a country state or as a nation state, are we clear? And because they have been traditionally using their military power to suppress anything that does generate any decolonization, much of the work of the Special Committee of 24 has not taken place, are we clear? However, decolonization is not in the sense that we look at it on the surface of, just like if as an example, if we're jumping in a mud pool and we want to get washed, you can throw a hose on us, we can jump in a tub, whatever. You can call that cleaning up. Well, decolonization can't exactly work like that, if you get the point. And it's not like the colonizing Europeans are going to go home, right? And then you have other Europeans who are welcome here under the treaty that are not in violation. So we have this conglomeration of political mix that needs to be addressed but has not been addressed. The other deal is that, I wanted to project to you, we were going to project this, but this particular computer didn't have a drive in it, so I couldn't project, so what I was going to present, you can't see physically, so I'll read some of it, and then we'll deal with it, some of it in communication, all right? So American, addressing severe birthright contortions and a conjoined identity crisis. And these are from some of my notes from 1992. When myself and Abdullah did lesson book 5, there were snippets in Moore's Order Roundtable, lesson book 5. This is some of the manuscript that's not in that book. Yes, you can. Yeah, please. And interject if you please too. Okay. And also you can share, if you choose to. Now, the point that I'm making is simply this. From the perspective that people take what they refer to as spirituality, or the unseen, you already know that spirituality is really breath and breathing science and techniques, have nothing to do with philosophy in the sense that people have been projecting it in the name of religion. Spirituality is not religion, and religion is not spirituality, though they're taught together. But I'm saying that because we need to be conscious of the fact that spirituality, for the most part, as a subject matter, when it's presented to the masses, has generally always been misrepresented by those who teach what they call spirituality, are clear. Not that they're unaware, it is that so-called religious philosophies have been more of a mind control and economic business model than really developing human, what you would call spiritual growth or ascension. Are we clear? But yet the masses have assumed that when they take participation and part in what you call organized religious orders, that they're actually dealing with what they refer to as spiritual ascension. For the truth of the matter is, mostly never happens because they're not really dealing with the science. And I'm not condemning them, I do not necessarily condemn, but call out the people of organized religion who know this, but don't teach this. Not that I'm making it a subject matter, I'm just bringing it to your attention. In order to bring this point to your mind, the fact that those who were assigned or even agreed to in international law to work on the issue of decolonization have breached their trust, although they go through the motions of pretending they've been doing this stuff. What I recognize is most important when people really don't comprehend what we would call ethereal ascension that some have been calling spirituality. But ethereal ascension is really what they've been calling spirituality, what they haven't been teaching, all clear. So ethereal ascension, it has more to do with beginning with the knowledge of the higher self and the lower self, not a belief, the knowledge of the beings on the planet. And the knowledge that they are transceivers. A transceiver receives and emits energies and signals. These are facts. Are we clear? Now, by the priesthood not really telling the people the truth of ancient Hikupta and ancient Yucatan. So when you're thinking of ancient Hikupta, because most people when they're told of the ancient, they're directed to Hikupta, which people call Egypt. That's not Egypt, it's Hikupta. But for people who really, according to their training, you'll say Egypt because they can relate to that. But that's not Egypt, that's Hikupta. Are we clear? Which not only includes on the northern side of Asia Minor, which we call Africa today, that's Asia Minor. Which also includes the lower part of North America.
All right.
Which would include coming from the Grand Canyon, coming down to the center, down the Nile, which you call the Mississippi.
All right.
Into Kentucky, Alabama, and Tennessee. That's Lower Egypt, or Lower Hikupta. And by the Rhodes scholars, as you may say, except for themselves and their secret societies, do not teach the truth of true geography, true history. Part of, and I think, well, I'm thinking that, but which is logical deduction. Because under the Spanish Inquisition operations, what they were doing is called drawing the line. Because the history of the human family is so strong on the earth, burning the books is not enough, if you get the point, because the evidence is too strong. So this is why what you would call socialization issues of branding from a war perspective is so important. So branding, creation of non-begear, turning maps around, dislocating people, murdering off the griots, murdering off the shakuns and the elders, poisoning the land, killing off certain animals. They would refer that generally, because it's broader than that, but it's generally referred to in history as the great Christian book burnings. But it's broader than that, are we clear? It is not only librorum indexus librorum prohibitorum, but indexus librorum expurgatorius, as well as the construction of institutions that were designed from their origin to teach docility in the name of education, which is pretty much what we've been dealing with, are we clear? So, a unique feature of it is when you examine, as an example, much of the work that goes on around the planet for decolonization, as an example, like Gandhi or Sindh. Now, it's an example, Gandhi or Sindh, or they'll write it in history, Gandhi of India, right? It seems innocent, doesn't it? Right? Well, already it's corrupted. And so you can only go so far and you're locked out, because that's not India and they're not Indians. It is called the art of displacement and the art of placing things in a time zone where they do not belong. Are we clear? It is also, they're called shifting the timeline. This is also why they altered calendars. Like, I'll give you another example. What is considered the Gregorian calendar, right? It has nothing to do with Pope Gregory, other than adjusting for the leap year. That's really an Egyptian calendar. Already exists. Do you understand? But yet the credit is given to Gregory. Do you understand? And so people of Asiatic descent sometimes reject that because they're assuming that that's one of the corrupted things that the Romans did. And so therefore they kind of toss it when it's actually theirs. The other deal of it is not being aware that that we use both the moon and the sun calendars together, traditionally. Though that practice, like you'll deal in different parts of the world where they may be more leaning to one than the other. You must be aware of that so that when you're looking into history and anthropology, that your concepts are not so muddied. And while they are subject matters within their own right, I'm only mentioning that to you to give you or to project to you a little bit of canvas for work that you will do on your own, but at the same time so that I won't go past you in some of these things that I'm saying, which are just basic stuff, but you'll have a concept of where I'm coming from with this. Are we clear? Now, with the knowledge of the Special Committee of 24, and it even goes up to more recent times when you see the articles of international law dealing with the rights of indigenous people, that still comes out of that committee operations, even though representatives of the different nation states have changed over time. The fundamental principles of the international law agreement for decolonization basically did not change. The interesting thing that you'll find out is that, as an example, Dr. Nailo, a lot of the work that we're doing here and that we've been doing here is actually decolonization. The different multiple subject matters that we talk about, nationality, birthright theft, the true structure of the politics is really decolonization, and that is part of decolonization. But what you will discover is that except in private conversation, most people who are aware of this in the political realm will not discuss this, and they'll act like this is something that we do in a venue like this, unique from other people. Do you understand? When actually it's their obligation to be doing this too. Now, by people not being aware of this logically, like for instance, as an example, and this occurs in discussions when you're looking at nationality and birthright, first thing comes in many people's mind is Nobudrali, the old Canaanite temple, then the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, the Moorish Science Temple of America, supported by Marcus Garvey and things like that. But they don't usually go any further than that, not knowing that that principle of operations is universal and it's supposed to be universal. Are we clear? Yeah. And so what you have is sort of like the assignment of the political elite of the world to start unraveling the corruption that colonism has done in the modern world and to the peoples of the earth. Instead, they have pretty much funded these different organizations and subdivisional agencies in the name of international helps, and have pretty much used them as finance laundering vehicles, and the real mission of decolonization has not been taking place except maybe through the Moorish Science Temple of America. And even that was infiltrated and somewhat neutralized, which you will see when you do research. You'll see what they call the factions, which causes certain confusion. But the confusion leaves once you understand the chess pieces. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? As an example, and I'm going to make this clear, because the issue is so broad-based and not limited into what you call generational time span. This deals with multiple generations. And so one of the operations that the FBI and CIA were doing was to project that it was a belief system or religious sect of Islam so that it could be dismissed. Because beliefs, they are just what they are. They're not necessarily facts. Do you understand? And if you really study, as an example, the Moorish Divine National Movement, that corruption is within that in the movement. And you actually have, with all due respect to all people involved in anything that they intend to be good, it's not admitted to. Or clear. And so you have a small faction of people who are actually working toward birthright restoration and estate restoration, and you have another faction in the same order that actually works absolutely against it. But this is not discussed openly. But you see the confusion, what they call divisionism, or the schismata that was deliberately interjected or clear. Now, if you're looking at it as a sociologist, as an example, studying it, you will see the conflict, the disorder, what you may refer to as varying opinions, and when it really boils down, that's totally a diversion because it's not about what opinions are. It's about decolonization, and it never comes up. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So I'm presenting to you this. Knowing the ethereal ascension of the humans on the planet, that there must be more effort put in us recognizing our self-responsibility. Are we clear? For some of the European sons and daughters who are assisting, because much of the work for dealing with the restoration is actually coming from a lot of European sons and daughters. And instead of going into the ancient Moorish science of the knowledge of the higher self and the lower self, the constitution of man, and not just assaults and things like that, the constitution, the nature of politics, they'll talk about what is called the shadow work. The shadow work is really working on the lower self, but you have to be aware of that to know that. Are we clear? Are we clear? Yeah. Now, that's part of true religious instruction, philosophy. But you know and I know that in most organized religious orders that they call themselves, because most of what they call religious orders are really, with all due respect, counterfeit. In truth, they don't teach religion. They teach dogmatism, emotionalism, and clubism, and self-righteousness, and divisions in families and peoples, and hatreds and disorder. And they've been getting away with it because the people don't know what spirituality is in the first place. They just were told by Reverend Pickfoot what it was, and they assumed that if you say God or Allah, or you got it going on. Yahweh, God, Allah, Jehovah. And they take it for granted, oh, he's a man of God and stuff. And so they automatically kind of assign to these people some kind of labels of divinity and honor that truthfully doesn't apply to them and never really did. But there's this assumption, that these people are honorable. No, they're not. Because it's sort of like this, on examination, not for comprehension and understanding, just for examination. They know that the order is set up in such a way that if, like as an example, I'm going to give you an example. And you can do some cross-research yourself. If you travel a lot, or if you deal with people from around the world, you'll find these things to be true, if you do any research. It's like, say you're a rabbi, right? Say you're an imam, and say you're a bishop from the Episcopalian church, and say you're a pastor from Baptist church, you're a Methodist, etc. Blah blah blah. Right. From their public presentment, right? They will all talk about there's only one God. This is general stuff, right? And they'll talk about love and brotherhood and the Lord loves you, and they'll pass the plate in between. Always do that because all their gods are always broke. You gotta buy them. You gotta, that's the game. And of course, these guys are middlemen, but they never give you the bank account number so you can make direct deposits, type thing. But the deal is that's pretty much the norm. Are we clear? This is what I've discovered over the years. And I don't know if some of you haven't had that experience yourselves. But I suggest if in your travels, if you develop or evolve, if it's not already with you, fair communications with people, you'll find that in private conversations with almost all those people I just named to you, right? If you really know the real history in a private conversation, they'll admit it to you. And then publicly go right back to their denominational, divisional position for their finance and their clubism. Are we clear? Example. Fact. We're just going to lay down some facts. All right. All scholars know, all ecclesiastical doctors, know, doctors of divinity, know that the fundamentals of all your major so-called, and I say so-called with an absolute grains of salt. Know that all your major religions is traced back to cosmology, to ancient Hittite that they call Egypt, up into Cinder that they call India. Are we clear? And that on the planet Earth, in your ancient Asiatic culture, so when you say your ancient Asiatic, Occidental, Oriental culture, you're including Africa, and the way they train people today, they separate that when it's not really separate. Are we clear? Are we clear? I want to make that point. And so when you must put things in their proper perspective of timeline. And so usually when they'll tell the history, they'll speak of Africa as if Africans aren't Asiatics. And as if Asia is only north, with the Manchurians, Russians, Hindustani, etc. When actually Africa is Asia. It's Asia North, Asia South, it's Asia South, right? All of the planets that in the ancient world, we always begin with Aleph or with an A. Now there's a metaphysical energy in that too, which we're not going to get into, but I just want to bring that to your attention. So all of your continents, or all of your major mass areas of land, begin with A. Are we clear? Go ahead, Paul.
Very quickly. I wanted to give a definition that we located online for decolonization.
Yes.
Decolonization is the process of revealing and dismantling colonist power in all its forms. This includes dismantling the hidden aspects of those institutions and cultural forces that had maintained the colonists' power and that remain even after political independence. Islam.
Now, and that's basically what I'm talking about. Some of the most recent acts of decolonization, and this is again, a lot of times, like when we're talking and people would ask, well, what do I do? How can I help? You know what I mean? And I would say, House Joint Resolution 192. The Organic Act of Congress, 1871. The Motu Proprio by Pope Francis, 2013. The Civil Orders by Pope Francis directly to Barack H. Obama, 2014. These are direct acts of decolonization.
Yes.
If you know what you're looking at. The U.S. bankruptcy statement, which is 192, that James Traficant exposed, and of course they later murdered him a couple years ago. And like years ago when I talked to him about it, because we already knew what's up, and he was a representative for Ohio, right? And now a point of interest to you, all your politicians that operate in what they call Western nations are either Knights Templars, Shriners, Masons, Knights of Columbus. Most of the Europeans are Knights of Columbus, or members of the clan, etc. This is in your modern day. So, as a general rule, if any of them break the code and start exposing any real history, they'll usually kill them, which is what happened to Traficant. You know what I mean? Now, one of the people that worked with him, whose name I won't mention, because of the seriousness of what Rome does, although they already know who he was, he called us, a couple of years ago, right? This is around the time after they killed him and claimed that his tractor turned over on him, type thing. They always do that kind of stuff. And we discussed some of these matters because I had talked to James, years ago, and they would communicate, certain things that, he's under threat. At the same time, he's not scared, and so this is what happens in general. So people who really know what's up, already know the rules, don't tell. Just like, say, the 33-degree Mason, Martin Luther King, when he started giving signals, telling, one of the signals, my people are refugees in their own land. He was done. When he started talking against the Pope's army, i.e. talking against the Vietnam War, which is their drug trade, that the U.S. corporation under the Popes took over when France got kicked out. Are we clear? And of course, that war that they called the Vietnam War in the 60s really was in 52, 53, on up. So most of the stuff they do, they lie about. Now, those who really know anthropology, not really. They call me from Washington. I gotta do it. Anyway, I do apologize too because I was supposed to do a radio show tonight. I forgot. I got this still tied up. Of course, I didn't get the chance to get back to them. But that's a different thing. But where was I? Where was I?
Proprio.
Yeah, the motu proprio.
Yeah.
Which you already, but I was actually talking about Traficant, but I want to blend that in.
The second guy.
Yeah. Now,
Vietnam War started 52.
Yeah. Like when he talked about the mountaintop, which is, so keep these things in mind because I'm painting a canvas for you. When Martin Luther King, as an example, talked about the mountaintop, he's talking about the Great Seal. All right, that's in Masonry. They also refer to as Muhammad's Mountain.
Right.
Are we clear?
Right.
So the mountaintop is the eye that you see, like on that deck note that you call dollar bill. When you see that pyramid with the eye at the top, that's the mountaintop. That's the Great Seal of the ancient Canaanite Moabite nation on the planet. Are we clear?
Yeah.
That is of all the Asiatic African people on the planet, not just in certain areas. Are we clear? That is the ancient seal of Earth's civilization. Are we clear?
Right.
And it's not just on that side, it's all over. We got more of them here than on that side. It's just not told to the masses. Our largest junta, or what you call pyramid, was in Mexico City. It was so large that they literally built cities with it. Cities. They tore it down so that people wouldn't know that Egypt is here. So that they could change the history. It's called Reconstruction. So when you see the, when you talk to most of the people here of Asiatic African descent and you start talking about ancient Hikhupta, they don't even know what Hikhupta is. They think Egypt is what that is. And they start getting all Afrocentric, they'll start wearing their ankhs and everything. They start wearing their colors, green, orange, and black, and different colors for the days, and think they got it going on. Not that they don't have some of it, but there's a mental disconnect from here, which was by design. Are we clear?
Yeah.
Which was by design. And so those things had to be corrected because the point that I'm making in the operations of decolonization, you cannot successfully decolonize land when the people themselves are mentally colonized, meaning that they must be purged. And therefore, on the broad basis of cleansing, nationality and birthright must be taught. And I think a lot of times when you bring it up as a subject matter, people are looking at it in a little pocket and assigning it in their mind to the Moorish Divine National Movement as if it had nothing to do with them, and it has everything to do with everybody on this planet. In truth, you know. It's not opinion, it's really fact. So certain things need to be emphasized or re-emphasized, because certain things need to be fixed because of the critical period we're in. And of course, there's always been a crisis as far as the politics and the economics of people who have been suffering from colonization. But the other greater problem is that it is so corrupted that it's destroying civilization on the planet. And whereas people don't make the connection ethereally, they're not seriously alarmed that they need to help get this work done. Dr. Ayo?
We have an online question from Matt Austin. He wants to know where African traditional religions stand in regard to the statement that you made about counterfeit religions.
All right. So if you talk about Yoruba as a principle, these are different names given to different powers in Swahili and other linguistic forms, and it's still cosmology. It's still cosmology. You know, if you're dealing with a Manchurian family, you know, you're dealing with year, rat year, big things like this, still cosmology. The people who don't know think that these are different cultures, as you're told. They say multicultural, and the real truth of it is only one culture on this planet. In real truth. However, to say that to the average person who's been trained under Rockefeller systems, they'll take that as being your opinion, unless they themselves have a background in study. Which is understandable because they've been trained in belief systems. Point that I'm making is that, and the appeal is to the intelligent minds that are out there, and those of you who are here, to keep that in mind, and that we must work on linguistic communications, whereas we can dig deeper to clean this stuff up because it has to be cleaned up so that civilization will survive. And this has much to do with Europeans who really understand what I'm saying right now, who have been doing a lot to help, in spite of a lot of Asiatics actually being counter to it, who you assume, because this is what you've discovered, you assume, like when you're talking to different people, and you'll see them finding among their so-called black leaders, once they start doing study themselves, the corruption that they have practiced, and they'll say, I don't understand how they can do that to their own people. Because they assume that just because they're of Asiatic African descent that they were moral for some strength, because they're so used to the Romans doing evil things. they keep assigning sides type thing rather than looking at the character of the beings. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then because most of them have misinformation in the first place, they assume that these people who belong to a lot of little Negro club and black organizations have the interest of these people in heart, because they're always saying, Jesus, Allah, and the blessings of the Lord, and Jesus loves you, and collective finance, and we need better jobs, and we need to march and pray about stuff. And they really assume that these people got your best interest in heart. No, they're pretty much what you call social treadmill. They're for keeping you on the treadmill. And until you study yourself, you won't recognize it if you're caught into that emotionalism. It is not unlike a carpenter. You hire a carpenter to fix your door because, fall in like, fall came and started, the leaves started turning a little bit, and then bam, you got this snow. What the swell? One of those type things. And so you don't have a lot of time. So the door's been broken, the window's been broken, the children are cold, and you hire a carpenter to fix this door. And you make contract with him, whether it's verbal, etc. And he's eating your peanut butter sandwiches, but he's been here 2 weeks. Now, basically, the door, a couple hours, you take the door off. You might have some framing that you need to fix, but if he's a carpenter, door's up, and he might be adjusting the lock, but you're cool. But this turns into 2 weeks, then it's 2 years, then it's 3 years, and then you got a partners organization where everybody's marching and praying. And one of these days, the Lord's going to deliver a door to you, and keep hope alive, and just keep on striving. And the struggle becomes the mission, not cure of anything. And that has been pretty much what you can tag almost every so-called black Negro organization that's always collecting millions and millions and millions of fiat notes from poor widows' pennies, decade after decade, from their families, with the promise of the deliverance that never comes. But they're not supposed to question that because it's the Lord type thing. Now, unbeknownst to most of these people, that most of these people are 501c3 skull and bones agreement operators operating with and for the state that they're talking against. That's why they never get into what you call really controversial subject matter. They'll just talk about racism, what color your skin is, and let us pray, and let us march all over the place, and let's raise some money, kick the devil's ass this week. Well, they was doing that when your grandma was here too, your grandma's grandma, whatever. And this is pretty much the mark that their legacy, that no one ever brings up, because it's the sacred cow type thing. You're not supposed to say they're con artists. And just get over it. Dr. Nigel, go ahead.
Okay, another question, and this is from Brother Rashad Bey. He wants to know, I know we hear you often say that Lincoln bankrupted the United States Corporation, but his question is, how did Lincoln bankrupt the United States? By what process or by what means?
And now it's back to having a background in history and anthropology. If one does not know that the United States is a private corporation operating at North America, the concept of how you will look at it will be incorrect, because most people are trying to measure in their mind, here's a country with vast wealth, resources,
Just like Walmart.
and they're measuring usually from that thought process. Are we clear? Now, keep this in mind. Abraham Lincoln, technically, by law, was not to hold that office.
That's right.
Because he was a member of the Barristers Association.
That's right.
So you must already be standing with the knowledge of the secret treaty of Verona and the plans to overthrow the republic that was set up by Muslims and a few European sons of honor, who you will refer to as the founding fathers, who were actually ministers plenipotentiary. All right, they were assigned, so they had Moorish fezzes. They were what you would call 360-degree Masons. That would be Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Madison.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jefferson. Yeah, Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Barclay as agent in business. Now, the reconstructed history is that they founded the operations here referred to as the United States. No, they did not. They were brought into government, into the society by honesty, and given operations because they were fighting amongst each other. And then they had to be distinguished from the vandals among them who were trying to undermine everything. Are we clear? So the honesty they'll refer to in history as equal. The equal, it ain't equal honesty. And that's the Ishnawa, the tree of the great peace. And this is ancient Muslim rule. And even when they rewrite about Matawaka, and they'll call her Rebecca, then they'll call her Pocahontas. She was Muslim too. And she was a potentess. She was the daughter of Mahasunukuk. Well, Hasunukuk was Shakun, chief of the Powhatan Confederation in your Southgate. And so that would deal with us from this lower part of what you call today of Lenape area that they call Delaware, down to Carolinas, Virginias, you know, down to the Seminole, which is in the land of flowers that you call Florida. So there were political confederations. That's not a people, that's a political confederation. Are we clear? And from that structure is what the Europeans adopt, what they call the Republican and the Democratic Party. Are we clear? That principle. But I just want to throw that at you because if you're thinking from the perspective of how people are trained here under the Job order is docility training for animals, donkey carriers. So the people in the education system are actually trained in docility, prepared as a worker class only, but told that's for human development. It isn't, never was. Are we clear? Clear. And the politics adjoined to it is to make them think that they're making progress by giving them degrees. You understand what I'm saying? When the degrees is really your degrees of the zodiac knowledge and your Gnostic wisdom, which they would formulate Rotary clubs for the little children, and then they would formulate secret societies for the adults so they could maintain the truth of human development for their selfish selves, and then keep the masses stupid. And all of your leaders would be assigned or picked from what you call secret society. And for the conversos among us, the conversos among us are the Moors and Yahudi, that you would call that in corrupted history, the Muslims and the Jews who were converted to Constantine order under the guise of Christianity and betrayed their own people. Those are conversos. So the conversos were constructed in one of the multiple orders generally referred to as boule. And from your marching Negro leader guys to keep the sheeple passive while they get raped, you know, civil rights marcher guys, they're all boule. Are we clear? Their job is to keep you thinking that you're making progress when you're not. You pay them and Rome pays them too. And they usually use Jesus as a lead because the people are spooked into that, not knowing that there's no J in Aramaic, because they don't know, you know, they're just believers. However, that's part of the political system. The trinity of operations for controlling these people is dogma, counterfeit, which is counterfeit religion, fiat, counterfeit money, education, which is counterfeit erudition. You have subcategories that come underneath of all of those, that trinity of operations, but that's what's generally used to control the masses. Are we clear? People are, if it's a woman, they're brought into what you call Eastern Star or Daughters of ISIS, Daughters of American Revolution. Only European women can be in the DAR though. Hillary is a DAR member, as an example. And this is where fundamental principles of citizenship are taught. So the manual that's used at North America and also adopted in other nation states is called the DAR manual. DAR is Daughters of the American Revolution.
Repeat the Trinity again, dogma.
Dog, yeah, go ahead.
You know, repeat the Trinity. You were dogma, religion, money, fiat, and the third one? Education.
Yeah, education.
And erudition.
Yeah, all right. And this is why, I had a conversation earlier today with a young brother, and was another brother, a guy who does some filming, and I was drinking coffee, and the young brother came in, and he recognized us. I saw your videos, you know what they always do and stuff. And they wanted to talk, and we went from there. But he asked me what an Edamon degree was because he saw it and he wanted to know what it was. But you already know what that is. I don't need to get into that. But we're getting into that. But it is the fundamental principle on why the Europeans, boldly say that our people can't read and they will never compete when they talk about the children. They say, don't worry about them little pickaninnies. They will never compete because they can't read. And then most of our people who don't really understand the dynamics get all insulted and want to march all over the place and protest and carry signs and, oh, they're racist. And that's their training. That's where they go with that, the race card all the time. Because they don't know that the race is the human species. Because they can't read, they don't know. And they've been trained to that with their so-called leader guys too. Do you understand what I'm saying? So they trust them. And so from the door, most of their arguments, though meaning well, are really stages of incompetence. It's difficult to get through to them because they think that they know what they're talking about. And they think that you're being arrogant trying to correct them. And then they think what you're trying to correct them with is your opinion, not based on grammatication. Matter of fact, most of them know what grammatication is. Because they got the degrees they graduated from college. And then I was looking at, I didn't bring that paper. I meant to bring a paper that I found when that somebody left on the table. And it was, I won't name the paper but it was a local paper that they had in Philly. And then they had a bunch of preachers on celebrating for the years of operation. That's the DAR manual. And they were boasting about the years in the communities, and then there was an article in there about this guy who had this organization with professors, and he's the administrator of Black Studies for years.
In Chicago?
Well, this is what the article was about, yeah. And he's complaining about the lack of support and things like that. And I'm looking at the article, and he's a so-called professor teaching Black studies and mad at the Europeans, who he's called white people, ain't supporting it while they're supporting other agencies in the college. And I'm saying, what makes him think that they're obligated to support something that they and he should know is a fraud?
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
And the fact that he's mad because they're not supporting it, under the guise that he's really talking about members of the human family, as opposed to misclassified and branded people that he's been assigned to govern over under a subdivisional agency under the jurisdiction of the corporate state that belongs to England, that he's complaining because they're not funding him enough. I mean, when you know what's up, you're looking at it for what it is. When you don't, you're thinking in this idea of racism, rejection, abuse. Yeah, but when you know better, this guy's full of shit. Being paid off to keep these people dumb, got a nerve to be called professor, knowing damn well these people ain't black people, and know that black does not mean Afrocentricity, does not mean dark skin. It means pale spots and pale colors. And that's basic third grade grammar. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? But he's a professor, and he's had a Black Studies head for years, and he's upset because they're not funding him correctly. And that's along the same lines that we're talking about. So overall, what I'm presenting to you is that we must take responsibility and start decolonizing ourselves, because that's where the work begins. And while at the same time some things are done for support purpose, in group order, the real work is really done with the single unit of the being. Your development, ethereal development that you've been calling spiritual development, if they really had told the people the truth, is really on what you call singular level. Are we clear? Truthfully. And it does not mean narcissism. You're true, I'll say it this way, what people were told spirituality is, which is not what it is, those breathing techniques will be taught to you. The knowledge of what is called the shadow work, or working on the lower self, is done with you individually. And it is not done in group order. Group order always gets corrupted. Are we clear? And particularly it comes under attack by the priesthood, because the priesthood has by design been suppressing humanity under the guise of raising them. So the fact of the matter is, because those who know this haven't spoken up, they can't be trusted either. And this is again why, it's difficult, to appeal to people and get them to start studying, because you don't want them to accept what you're saying either without research. Do you understand? So you try to find certain key pieces of information and history and put them together, present them to the people, and trust that they don't fall into the trap of follower type mentality. Because your true development does not come with following. It doesn't. And then awareness of that without being corrupted is work that you have to do. Are we clear? And then, of course, you have support systems when you come together in group order, but you never get confused with the fact that the shadow work, or the working on the lower self, must be done with yourself. And in the group order, it is only given to you the information that's been held back from you so that you have tools to work with. Are we clear? And then we lean on each other for assistance, pull each other's coattail, but understand your development is on you and it's in you. Are we clear? And this is again why it's important for all the energy units, or what we call these, they'll say, I don't like to use the word individual, but I'm only using it connotatively so that you can, with the people listening, so that they don't get confused and we don't have to go off into some other explanations. The single star units, or the energy monads, which is really what they are. And they'll call them individuals. You must be aware, and this is where when Drawley said, the people must know of their higher self and lower self.
Yeah.
The reason why he says that, because he already knows for them to really be developed in ethereal learning and the Gnostic wisdom that they've been told was spirituality, that they must be aware of that, because the people who should have been telling them that have not told them. And knowing that if you don't know that, it's not that you won't arrive to that, because most people will do in the nature of themselves, but the problem is, and has been, is that they end up being older when they finally figure it out, and they're usually fixed in their spooky mentality, or they say, if I knew then what I know now, type thing, and they really don't start to work because they say, I only got a few years left, so hey, I'm partying. Yeah. And really, people do that. But that area of erudition is rarely comes up for real serious analysis and discussion. It's usually mentioned and bypassed, and they go back to what we were doing yesterday. Not knowing that nature does not respond to us the way we respond to ourselves in what we call timeline. Nature deals with outer seasons the same way we deal with inner seasons here. And by not being taught the truth of religion, we always look at the inner wheel and don't look at the outer wheels, and therefore we're not using all of the tools. And we think that because we perfected certain concepts in the inner wheel, meaning how we look at our calendars, or how we look at the 12 signs in the zodiac, limited to that, and then think that we got it going on. When actually, in the truth of religious instruction, you're taught the inner world and the outer world too. Or like they say in ancient Egypt, the underworld and the upper world. Or like they'll say in the church, the upper realm or the upper room, and they don't tell people what that really means. It's the higher self. It's also the higher chambers of the mind. So this will teach you about the chambers of the mind. You know, conscious, subconscious, supra-conscious mind. How they're linked, how they work, the activation of the 7 major chakras, which we went into a little bit before, or what they call the Christ degree. We're learning those fundamental Gnostic principles on how that is done. Learning not to cheat. Not because you can be aware of it, but you cheat and you jump certain cycles. Some people go off.
Oh,
Yes. You know, forcing things.
okay.
Forcing development. You understand? I'm not getting into that, but I think those of you who understand the tree of life kind of understand what I'm saying, because a lot of people keep trying to shortcut. Because you're here for experience. You know, knowing that.
Okay.
But, go ahead.
Wait a minute.
Give her the mic. Okay. Oh, I got something. Oh, look. We're all rolling our hands together. You know we're here for it now. Go ahead.
It's small grass sheet. Okay. Quick. Okay, here it is. You mentioned jumping ahead.
Yeah, or when I say jumping ahead, I'm only saying like this. You know, like when someone, like they'll get in organized groups, and I'm not knocking it,
Gotcha.
to activate the chakras,
Yeah, exactly.
and people anxious to hit that crown chakra starts jumping ahead when they actually haven't developed.
They haven't cleaned the
They haven't cleaned up.
other 6.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And
kinda
because they're
high-minded.
aware
The
of it.
heart is still dirty,
Yes.
but they trying to be high-minded.
And they're looking at it from a data perspective
Gotcha.
and not understanding that nature doesn't recognize that.
So you're not talking about like road openers. Like if there's that's not jumping ahead, is it? Like
No.
if you have a blockage and you know you need to do.
Let's kind of put it this way.
Not that.
Let's put it this way. What I'm trying to say.
Gotcha.
The best way, even though we may get frustrated sometimes, is letting nature take her course. But by doing the cleansing work that you should be doing, or what they would say the baptism, symbolic. That's the washing is symbolic.
Purging out the
Purging,
old in your,
cleaning the lower self, being
Yes.
aware of the lower self.
allowing the newness to come in.
Exactly.
Right.
Forcing it. See, because, and it's not unlike some people who become aware of the esoteric and Kabbalistic knowledge and start wanting to astral travel.
That's nice.
Because they're able to do it, they discover a little bit and they start assuming because of training, and this is the point that they forgot, that they're trained in belief systems, that the upper realm is clean and pure. And that's not true, it's just a different dimension.
There's some lights going on in there.
And then get occupied. Do you,
Yes. You
You
come back,
understand?
wake up sweating.
when I say occupied, this is where, when they're not told the truth about who we really are.
Absolutely.
Somebody else come back.
And someone occupies the body. Now they're in conflict. What you say? I didn't say it.
Oh, I was just talking to such and such.
That's occupation.
I heard of a similar situation where I was talking to my sister, and she was telling me that she was at the hospital recently, and one of the nurses, she would not go into one of the ladies' room because she felt as if when the baby was born, a walk-in occurred, and the baby did not look the same from birth until like a couple of minutes later. It's like the baby changed form to something else.
And it occurs.
Yeah.
Now, people who are sensitive can pick that up.
And she did.
But they need to know what they're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Not, like a lot of times we go by feelings.
Mm-hmm.
We need to clean up to the degree that we literally recognize what things are. That we become clear.
Right. Instead of being spooked about it,
Yes.
could possibly aid the...
No different.
Right.
Now, there you go.
Because the mother is taking
Yeah.
something home that...
That ain't
That
hers.
Yeah.
But she built that shell.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times it's karmic from her.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And again, the truth about karma is not really also taught. It's not just what you do, it's what you don't do. But all things operate on cause and effect. And this is where responsibility must come in. And this is again where we're talking. Because I think the consciousness, and because we have a tendency to feel sorry for ourselves, we catching hell, and you feeling sorry, and you want to jump the gun type thing. And it's not. I'm not saying that we shouldn't.
Right.
I'm saying all things should be done with intelligent deliberation and consideration. Meaning that if you write a check, cash it. And we talk about on the ethereal realm.
Exactly.
Don't try to bypass it, because while we may look at the art of doing things, this is why, like for instance, like people who delve into magic without really understanding magic with a CK and with a K in reality, and while they may develop certain arts in it, they actually end up having a miserable life because they're jumping the gun.
Exactly.
And nature don't measure the way you measure. This universe didn't survive outside of intelligence.
Exactly. Right.
And it's also back to the misconception that lives among us, where people don't recognize that the earth is a conscious being.
She's gonna remember even when you don't.
Yeah, do you understand? And so they'll talk about Afrocentricity, but their lifestyle doesn't reflect that they really are in that mental. They just say it because somebody said about Ma'at and the rules of Ma'at and ancient Egypt and Ru and Osset and Horus and everything, and they get into this symbolically.
Right.
Not unlike people get into church, my synagogue, and they go to the surahs and through the salat and through the prayers, because that's how everybody says things, and you gotta say it like this, right? No, you don't say it like this, you gotta say it like this. Because if you don't say it like this, the Lord don't hear you type stuff. Well, nature don't recognize none of that crap we be doing. She only recognizes sincerity. There's a vibration with it. So if you're praying, we ain't talking about P-R-E-Y. No one needs to know that you're praying. The most powerful prayers, you don't know that they're praying. Those who put on a show are the least ones to trust.
Boy, John, say it again, Todd.
It's 12 o'clock, 12:15. Hold on for a minute. They roll out the carpet and stuff. When he do all this stuff. Oh wow, he's a godly man. Don't believe him. Don't. Let them have their thing, but divine law don't recognize none of that stuff.
Personal.
But I'm not saying that don't do that. Makes you feel good. Do your thing. We need to the point that I'm making is we really need to learn the truth about religion and nature and the workings of nature and us being harmonic with her or not. And that most of the things that we set up in the name of the mathematics, which is what rituals really are, mathematical symbolisms, that they're not so much important as they are for just training. That once you understand the principle, you don't need any of that stuff. You just need to be real. Or what is called being yourself.
Genuine.
But if you don't know yourself, you can't be yourself. This is back to the inner circle, the outer wheel, or what they refer to as Ezekiel's wheel. And so we'll be looking at Ezekiel, most people start thinking about a man who's going, look at the wheels in the sky and shit. You know, and then they're looking at it like that, and it's not really, it's the zodiac, but there's also the outer wheels. So if, you know, as we are in the operative mentality that we're here alone, always been, wrong, and that if they see something that's unusual, unidentified type thing, that, whoa, that's really weird, no, it's just part of the system. It's just that you just had shades on it. Get over yourself. You know, and we've been locked down into this little fenced-in belief pocket, and it was done to you by the priesthood, who you thought was helping you to expand into the heavens, when actually they're doing the reverse. In other words, they fenced you in. They enslaved humanity. That's connotative enslavement, because that word is really a nationality. But the system of forced servitude, mental suppression, because they really don't want you to, it's sort of, you know what it's like? It's like someone who really understands how this works go in a garden and puts a dark, heavy plastic cloth across the crops to make sure they have limited sun exposure so that they will never grow to what they're supposed to be. Wow. But listen every once in a while to make sure they're not totally dead, because they want to eat them. But if they let them grow, that they will expand bigger than them, and that's what they fear. I'm telling you exactly that that's exactly what's been going on with humanity on this planet. That's true. Our job really is to lift that veil, even while we're subject to the same BS, if you get the point.
To remove the veil.
Yes, and be aware of that you're doing it. Not to be doing it accidentally, discovering that you need to be cognizant that that's what you're doing. And find ways of communicating without becoming idolized.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Go ahead, Dr. Mayo.
What came to mind is when we were talking, listening earlier today to Terrence Howard.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and I think you were down here by then, but he was talking about the discovery of, I know we're kind of off topic, but he was talking about the fact that once you know one thing, then you know everything.
Because it all unfolds.
Right, because he of course he was talking about the flower of life and how he had, discovered, how those I guess those dead spaces and the energy and so forth. But he said that
what we call negative spaces.
Negative spaces.
And so that everyone kind of understands what we're talking about. Remember when we talked about before, and I said if you were outside this planet and looking back on this planet, if you looked at the axes on both sides of this planet, coming in, you'd see this. Hex Alpha. Now, people who don't know, so, that's the Jewish star. I know that's bullshit. Number one, there ain't no such thing as a Jewish nothing. No, I'm just telling you. That's Hex Alpha. They'll call it the shield of Solomon, stuff like that. That imprint, you'll see almost like in a cloud-like form in the north, what they call the North Pole, and in the southern pole of the planet, if you're coming from the outside. What you discover is when they're teaching people here on the planet about the atom structure, and then the quark, and then the crystalline form. So everything on this planet, when examined, actually has a pyramidal crystalline form. And this also symbolizes in Hermetic law, rule as above, so below. but it also symbolizes balance. Well, clear.
Would that also be Leonardo da Vinci's model when you see the man?
That would be Venus, and then that's the 5-pointed star, or arm. You know, the work, the deeds of man. Arm, leg, arm, head. Allah forward, Allah backwards. Whether you're dealing on the clockwise, what they refer to, or counterclockwise, or circumambulation, like they go around Kaaba, the cube in principle, and they do it ritualistically, but the metaphysical knowledge behind it and our relationship to this planet and other planets is not taught or known by them. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Or even other beings in the planet and outside the planet in the outer wheels. That's always communicated with us, always. Are we clear? And while some of them have tampered with us too, genetically, what's also been going on this planet is that they, at different times, have been battling with each other over us.
Right.
And we have been told that they are gods or our creators, and they are not. So that's part of your confusion too. Now, while that's not a subject matter, I'm just telling you certain truths that are known. But they don't discuss it because that would cause different institutions here to collapse overnight, called religion. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
And so people, even when challenged with certain fundamental truths, well, they say, we gotta have something to hold on to.
Yeah.
Well, who said you was drowning?
Right.
You know, and that comes from the whole psychology of the priesthood telling people that they're born in sin, that you're born unworthy, you know, you're guilty for living.
Now you're preaching.
You're guilty for living, so you're born guilty for living, so you owe something. Meanwhile, they're the middleman to collect.
Right.
You know, and that's a game that was created by the priesthood, and it's totally a fraud. Totally a fraud. You know, because the real deal is, those are people who are aware, and this is back to Sam, being aware of the higher self and lower self, or even some who come back to help, and then some come back to feed on the people. Do you understand? And people assume that because people have evolved on the tree of life, that they're necessarily ascended to the good. No, they're just evil better. Do you understand? Because you have development to do on all the planes. This is again why we always have that inner battle with all of us. We have those battles. Dr. Leo?
Just want to interject. On my way to Arkansas on the 15th of October, about 8 hours into the drive, I had made a reservation to stop, but I thought about halfway there. And so I made a reservation to stay in a common lodge overnight and then pick up the drive in the morning, my friend and I. We were just about there, and I look up in the sky, and I see these 3 circles like this, but I'm thinking, I'm tired. You know, I've been driving 8 hours, 8.5 hours. I think I'm hallucinating. And so I say to Ernestine, I say, do you see that? And of course, since she wasn't driving, she was able to lean even more forward and look. And she said, yeah, but as a matter of fact, she saw it, what was over it broader. And so we just dismissed it as, because it looked cloud-like, but they were circles.
Oh yeah, it looked like cotton balls. Like a trail
going in
of
circles.
And
like in triangular circles. And so we went to Little Rock and we came back about 3 weeks ago. I just happened to turn on Coast to Coast AM. It comes on like 1 o'clock in the morning till 4, and it was already on. And I don't even know what the guest's name was, but he was talking about UFO. He was talking about portals for UFO or unidentified, object sightings around the world.
Yeah.
And so I turned on just in time for him to start naming the places. And so he goes, Crossville, I think it is, Crossville, Tennessee. And I said, wait a minute.
Lower Egypt.
It was where we stayed. It was where we went. It was where the Econo Lodge that night that we were almost to was in Crossville, Tennessee. And Crossville, Tennessee is a piece. The man said this is a portal, one of the portals around the world. They have identified places around the world. And when I heard Crossville, it shook me. So I went back and looked at the itinerary for Hotels.com, and sure enough, that's where we were, right where we were, in Crossville, Tennessee. And I mean, I literally, first I thought I didn't really see what I saw, and she said she saw it too, but then to hear about 3 weeks later, you know, somebody out of the blue, I just turned on the radio at 1 o'clock in the morning, and he's talking about a portal being there. So there, and I say that to say that there are so many things, like you have already said, that we are not given, we're not privy to. That they've known for.
We've been locked out deliberately, and that's what needs to be understood. That's the point that I'm making, meaning that the priesthood across the board in the name religion, whether Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Christianity, all of them, all of their heads already know this. And I'll say this to you. This is one thing that you sensed when you saw it. This is probably what subconsciously, made you click a little bit, is that you recognize that those cotton clouds were in this stratosphere. Is that not true?
Right.
Because they were in the stratosphere.
They were.
Yeah. Now, and that's why you knew two things you knew. You saw the trail, you couldn't see the thing that made the trail. Two, they looked like cotton balls tied together. Mm-hmm. And dark blue space, almost black space, like
in the middle of it.
And very clear, even if it was cloudy around it. Now, the deal of it is that I would assume this. I'm not saying that that's what it is. Every once in a while, because it's not always that way, but sometimes they're letting you know that they're there. More now is because some are considering to make more direct communication, since those who have been hiding it from you or decolonizing clearly haven't been willing to fix anything. And so there's consideration of removing them physically and re-communicating with you directly.
Well, that's interesting that you would say that, because about a week ago I spoke with Linda Smith. Called me. Linda Smith is Richard Smith's wife, who wrote The More the Mason and the Alien. And Linda is what you call an experiencer. And Linda shared with me that there's a group, they're in New Mexico, I think. There's a group in that area of extraterrestrial
That'd be closer
beings.
into New Mexico area.
Right, that are there and have been there a while, and that they've been communicating with her and a couple of others, that she said either in the fall of 2020 or 2021, they're planning to make their, like you just said, their own sort of disclosure of themselves in a soft sort of way. She said, like, what's that thing called, fourth encounter? What was that thing called? Encounters of the first encounter. She said a kinder, gentler one, but that's the message that they've been receiving, that between, she said either the fall of 2020 or 2021, that they're going to make their presence known, because they are concerned that we are destroying the planet.
Well, see, because this is where the problem, let's go back to this.
Top of the mic.
This seems to the average person as being unrelated.
Yeah.
It's not unrelated. It's just on the lower aggregate. like sometimes you hear me telling people a lot of things that we're doing today will not be doing later. And this is so that as we get perfected in certain things of reversion operations, that's a learning curve. That's not the goal. although it appears to be the goal. When people on a heavy learning curve, what they are today, they're assuming that we're goaling them to restore the estate and their ideas, the estate on this earth by itself. Oh, yes or no? It's just that they need to go through that to the same way. Put it this way.
Okay.
The same way that we're looking at the energy centers in the tree of life in the physical body. The most of the concentration has been on the 7 major ones. And so the mind is there in the 7 circles which are in Asia, which is the body. Well, they'll say in the Bible 7 churches which are in Asia. All right, but the churches mean circles. Just what it means.
That's right. 7 chakras.
Yes.
Circles.
But the point that I'm making is they need to be aware that there are hundreds of energy wheels. This is just an elementary teaching to stimulate for higher planes, because once you get there and you say, oh man, I'm at the mountaintop, wait, what? You know, it's not, it's a pass-through. You know, don't get settled, don't think in your mind that we're settling here. But you can't jump this either. Our mission here is to defeat Rome. Rome's mission is to defeat us. Get over it. But that's part of your lesson. Do you understand? They are assigned just like you are. Problem is, some who came here to help got corrupted. I'm just telling you what the problem is. Some who came here to help got corrupted. Are we clear? Point. This must be fixed because now the planet is in jeopardy. So the politics as we've been measuring them are important, but not important as you think they are. However, the ethereal energy that rides with it, you still got to come out of it. Even though we're going to discard it. It is not, you know, like people are arguing now about the gold and the silver and whether there's money or not type thing.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of overcoming this. And then they're discovering that the birth certificates and the marriage certificates and the driver's license are all bank bonds.
Right.
And they thought these were different instruments for purposes of travel on the earth and trade. Well, yes, they are, but the truth of the matter is you're going through this to fix this thing. But the real deal, on another level, we don't even deal with that. But you have to learn that here. But you have to learn to get past it. Do you understand? It doesn't mean that it's sort of like your comprehension on how to properly use it in order to defeat Rome is really what your lesson is, not getting more of it. If you're caught in thinking that you need that fiat, then Rome still got you. If you're thinking on how to use it as a chess piece, then now you're starting getting out of the game. You're starting to unplug from the matrix. Do you understand? Getting people to recognize that for themselves, not because you told them that, is where our work is.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't unravel that yard, no one's going to hang you with it. Do you understand what I'm saying? As long as he can keep you in that mental. See, this is why you got to understand, not because we're saying reject in the sense of reject, but you've got to reject dogma. You've got to reject fiat. But don't mean that you ain't going to use it.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying to you? You've got to reject education. So now, the goal is erudition. Gold is religion, true religion, cosmology. And the gold and silver, not just because it is the cosmological energies of the planet, is because it's also healing energies for you. Which is another reason why when you're aware of this, you carry gold and silver coin in your pocket, and copper. Because they are healing energies. Do you understand what I'm saying? Also, they're in your body, and particularly the gold is around your heart. That's why they steal your gold, to kill you, to keep disease on you. It's not just because of the value that we keep talking about Article 1, Section 10, Constitution, because the Constitution of the operations of man is also the Constitution of man in the physical form. But we need not get into that because that's not really where we're at. But I'm just throwing that at you because of where the conversation is leading to, so that we don't jump. But because, it's this thing, is when you start comprehending some of this game, people want to jump past it and think they're going to skip this lesson. Well, you were placed here to deal with that lesson. For the most part, you agreed to come here any damn way, so get over yourself. Just because you forgot doesn't mean that that's not why you're here. You comprehend where I'm coming from? You need to know that you're on this planet. This is a school. But at the same time, for some, it's a prison.
Right.
And you need to understand all of that together. And then you need to understand that the God systems is more our making than vice versa. And it's hard for people to handle that truth, but if you can't handle that truth, believe me, you will become food.
Islam.
You will become fodder. We've got to find a way to communicate that without people feeling threatened, but at the same time, you can't sit around and keep babysitting them while they resist that which is obvious in nature if they would just start thinking. Because if they start thinking, nature herself will start wiring them back together. Because they are transceivers. They are artificial intelligence in a physical form. Truthfully, go ahead.
Yeah.
Give him the mic.
Peace.
Peace.
Before my mother passed, I told her, I said, Mom, we used to live on 834.
Stay in the mic.
When we used to live on 834 West 5th Street, there was a phantom form used to come in through the hall like a ghost every night and stuff. Other night, and I stayed in bed and stuff, and I never told her about that until I got older. And then, as I got older, I seen the experience of some big like giants in the sky. They were ghosts and so forth and so on. And then the last experience I seen a big constellation run around the sky. So what you was talking about, the extraterrestrial, I know that.
Well, people like calling, you can say terrestrial, non-terrestrial is a better way to say it.
Right.
They say extra, and I understand that. Just say non and terrestrial and non.
Right.
Because a lot of what they consider non-terrestrial is terrestrial. It's just that they're not aware of it. You understand what I'm saying to you?
Yes, sir. You familiar with 7 galactic heavens, right?
Yes.
Because our 7 chakras ties in with that, don't pass.
Well, from a metaphysical point of view, that's another metaphysical way of talking about ascension. Because when you talk about degrees of ascension or the activation of the glandular systems, they're also called heavens.
Right.
So it's not necessarily going anywhere physically.
Right.
But there is activation physically.
Right.
So if you want to talk about activating the medulla, pineal gland, etc., those are the major spiritual glands, then that's really what you're talking about, ascending into heaven.
Right.
Now, and so that's sort of like an semi-anthropomorphic expression of the human evolutionary form, coming out of the darkness created by the priesthood to deactivate them. A lot of what we have been calling our gods, some of them know that you will evolve past them. So they want to keep you asleep. Your so-called dogma systems serve that purpose for them, not for your development. Now, while that can be a subject matter on its own, until people come to a certain revelation of consciousness within themselves, it's a moot conversation, so I don't go there. Because a lot of people like to hear stuff like that, but they're not going anywhere with it unless they're vibratorily harmonic with it. And there's no need to confuse humanity when we need to evolve them on your lower planes of degrees so that they can stand on the degrees that they will definitely acquire. You know, our major issue is to remove the obstructions. That's it. Not to give you anything. Because we can't give you anything anyway. You already got it. You know, like this old guy, this idea, you know, we want to bring salvation. Ain't bring salvation to no damn body. It exists for you already in nature. Your evolutionary development brings you to vibratorily to the recognition of seeing it. Chicago, what did you call it from all this? Let me turn this phone down. I apologize, you all. You know, it's sort of like, this is what you know. If you help remove the darkness, the light is already there. You give no light. You know the idea, and this must be kind of comprehended. You know, like one of the things that Noble Drawley did, he's credited with bringing light to people in the dark. That's sort of like a casual statement of cause and effect, but what he was doing was removing the dark and the light is already there. Truth is already there, if you want to say. No one brings it to you in the concept that it. Our work is more to remove the lie, or to expose the lie, or to get people to thinking and being willing to challenge what they thought was real. And nature and they themselves will do the work, not you.
That's right.
Are we clear?
Clear.
So I'm telling you that from the gate. You know, so when we go into these different subject matters where people think, oh man, you're smart. No, you know, no, I'm stupid. But, you know, they get in that kind of mentality when you're really trying to help stimulate them to think, to recognize that some of them will evolve past where you are. But when you can easily recognize when they're in the dark, it doesn't make you better than them, it just makes you more aware. No different than you as an adult recognize when a child, you know, sucks on a taffy that they dropped in the gutter, you know, and they pick it back up, you know, you said, oh, let me rinse that off type thing. So you rinse it off, give it to them anyway, but that type of thing, but you don't let them suck on it. This is kind of the same thing, if you get the point. But what I've observed, and I think you all have observed too, a lot of people that have gone into divinity scholarship or into ancient Egyptology, as they like to call it, which is really modern to us. That's not ancient to us. But we'll let them get away with that. That's fine. Have fun. It's not ancient. That's modern. But it is a reference point that many agree to. We'll take it from there. Them people there ain't the people who's there.
Exactly.
Those are hybrids. Do you understand? So you want to learn about ancient Egyptian, truthfully, they can tell you some things about artifacts, but they're not locked into the genetics of that stuff. Because it ain't them, it's us.
Islam.
Do you understand what I'm saying to you? The deal is to unlock your genetics. Because the memory is in you. They're looking for something outside when it's all in you. The priesthood has been locking you down so that you don't discover it. That's what their job is. Let's get over it, let's get through it. That's what their job has been. And if you follow them, they're feeding on you. This will be demonstrated in, as we talked about the other night on the radio, Mustafa.
Yeah.
Where Jesus is disputing with the priesthood and those who are stealing the widow's pennies. That's what that symbolizes.
Yeah.
All right? Or when, at the age of 12, where he goes down to the temples and he's disputing with the doctors of the law, they're doctoring up the law. That's what that symbolizes. That is a story that symbolizes the suppression of the priesthood The priesthood's job is to tell you the devil's doing it. See, the priesthood's all pointing, the devil over here, and we were making peanut butter sandwiches in the name of the Lord and shit. Good Kool-Aid and everything. Then the devil came over, kicked over the Kool-Aid, and took all the peanut butter sandwiches, and what we got to do is raise some money and kick the devil's ass and shit. And this is the general synopsis across the board, and it's BS Gedorf.
Yeah.
The demon is the priesthood. Who's the devil? He got his hand laying upon your left cheek and digging in your pocket. And Rome got their hand in the other pocket. And they're paying each other, and they're keeping your mind over here for this mystery devil that you got to overcome. There's God's boy who's competing with him, type thing. When it's the higher self and lower self. All is you. It's all within you. And the Christ degree is you at least getting to the heart chakra. Then you're getting in what you call the Christ degree, or ascending unto heaven. Or when they talk about in the Torah or the Bible, Tanakh, Pentateuch, etc., and they say anointing my head with oil, that means activating the pineal gland. That's all. And of course, that's dealing with the thalamus that comes, from the dark side of the brain, terminating right over the nose, right here, where they activate that little tingle you get. Sometimes with your awareness, that's activation of a chakra. You understand? And if you know what it is, it ain't no big deal. You know what I mean? If you don't know what it is, oh man, I think I need to take an aspirin. No, you don't. Not necessarily. You need to know need to know what's happening. It's according to where you're at, tone-wise. And nature's always working with you. What happens is the belief systems that they have given the people in the name of religion is self-suppressing of the activations of the glandular system, and particularly the pineal. Are we clear? So to lock the pineal down, they attack the medulla. It's like they'll show the symbolic picture of Yeshua, Jesus, and they'll have the nimbus with the opening here and the two openings there, but then the other one is hidden because it's laying on the medulla.
Okay.
See, so it's the unseen that you need to open up to ascend unto heaven. You see the point? But that's symbolic. You don't reject it. You need to understand that it's symbolic of glandular development. So Christ is in all of us. You need to know what that really means. It's not a being in the sense that people think it is. Go ahead, sis. Give me the mic. Because we don't want to miss this now. I know. But you comprehend where we're going with that, right? All right.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I remember just 2 years ago when I first started attending classes, I would get this, on Friday, I would get this splitting headache, like right in the center. And I would be crippled the entire weekend until Monday. It would not go away. Mm-hmm. And then you start talking about, you had us to go get the book, Decolonization, and learn about that. And then you start talking about the salts of salvation and start taking your cell salts and things. Mm-hmm. And then after that, when I got on the cell salt regimen, the headaches were going away because, it's repairing the cells within your body and things of that nature. And I do recall initially, and we would be in here, we would have to have almost a gallon of jug of water during class.
Yeah.
And everyone would try to drink their whole gallon before they did class.
Yeah.
So I noticed we're not doing that anymore, Mustafa. What happened to our gallon of water that we used to have to drink? Remember that? We used to have to drink the gallons of water before class to keep us, balanced.
Right.
And then my migraines was just horrible. And then they went from like 24 days. I got with Brother Dave and started doing herbal therapy, and my migraines dropped down to like 3 days, hormonal. Yeah. But then I started charting the moon cycle, and I figured out which cycle I'm on. I'm on a crescent moon, and started working with Sister Dorothy, regarding the crescent herbs. And so I'm really not even getting the migraines anymore, because it's like you got to rebalance your body. Yes. And we're not taught that.
No. What she's talking is part of religion.
Exactly.
And people keep looking at these as other disciplines, just like Reiki and stuff like that.
Voodoo.
They be looking at it
Love that voodoo.
that's part of religion.
Exactly.
It itself is not what, it is a part of religious instruction all over the planet.
Now, if I can get up and I'm in balance, I can look and see what's going on in the planetary and know what herbs I need to get to put myself back in alignment, to be back in harmony with the earth and things like that.
So when your mother brings you, don't she bring you, attach you to a placenta?
Right.
It's a plant.
Exactly.
It's just organic.
And but you know, it's crazy. We have to wait till we like 44, 45, 46 to learn these things. Like that's so. You go through
That means we're behind it.
Exactly. You go through those emotional. Like I was telling my mom, she was like, "Well, you can't be pissed off and upset and all this at the same time. You got to pick an emotion and deal, and you got to kind of work through it. You know, she said you got to work through it till you get to it. You know, you're not here to just be." You know, hallelujah, stomp your feet and go around the circle every day. You know, there's work to do.
And not just that, you know, and it's not condemning that either. But it is, once you really begin to harmonize with nature, you'll recognize that a lot of those things that we have been doing in ritual format, in the name of religion, were actually designed to stagnate you.
Exactly.
To divert your attention from the real work. And telling you it was the work.
Exactly.
But you never suspect that man behind the pool pit is a dark head.
Exactly. But that's like,
do you understand?
From 16 to 44 years of crippling migraines, that the only thing to teach you is about the cell salts and the herbs. Because it's in the Bible.
That's a piece of it.
Revelations 2:22 tells you the healing comes from the earth. From the earth.
Yeah.
From every seed bearing fruit. It's
Yeah.
there. But they don't point us to us.
Be food for you.
Food for your healing.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Yeah.
But they keep us, oh no, don't read Revelation. You know, stay away from there.
But what else does Revelation do?
It awakens certain points within the knowledge.
You start learning about the 7 churches, circles, which are
learn about
ancient.
Colonial energy.
Then you start thinking, well, why? If you start thinking, well, what is it really trying to tell you?
Exactly. About yourself.
Of course it is.
But they tell you, no, we're not reading Revelations.
And of course, one of them will tell you is Philadelphia.
Exactly.
That's another code too.
So they give you the 101 homilies.
That's where they stole your birthright.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not,
Islam,
it's
thank
hidden,
you.
but it isn't.
Thank you for your work.
Yeah, it's hidden, but it isn't.
That's
If you get the point. Now, the point of it is, this is back to what we're talking about. America, the ancient Canaanite Moabite. So when people think about Canaan, you know, we're thinking near the land of flowers. We're thinking near the land of flowers, right? But we're thinking in the age before the great earthquake. All right? So now when people think about Canaan, they're thinking about Palestine. So the energy concept is wrong. It's sort of like when you all went to, we found those crystal mines in South Carolina?
Hot Springs, Arkansas.
And in North, because that's where a lot of crystals are.
Was that?
They're
In Arkansas, and Arkansas is the crystal
capital. They call it crystal, but they're also in Carolinas too. I'm just telling
North
you.
Carolina.
Yeah, I'm just telling you. Because in that whole area of Lower Egypt. But they have areas where they have been mining and are aware of.
Yeah, I was going to go to one that Saturday,
But there's more than that. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, I know. I heard in North Carolina.
But they're energy centers. But I'm saying this to you. So when people keep thinking, because the way the training is today, when you talk about Canaan, their mind is only in South Asia, right? And where all that battle, the fake history is taking place. But that fake history is them covering up the history. Really, that's what it's part of. That's really what that's part of. But if you understand that you're still at Canaan, then you don't seek to go. For instance, if you know, like a lot of people go to Hikuta, they're going to do Egyptian studies and they're going to go see the Sphinx and all that stuff, right? That stuff in Grand Canyon that's older than that stuff. There's stuff in Lower Egypt that's older than that stuff. In Kentucky and Alabama, under the ground. That's older than that stuff there. That doesn't take anything from there, but I'm just showing, I'm expressing to you how people's minds are molded based on their education that really is a control system. That was put in place more to hide the real history than to give you anything. And this is what the symbolism, where in the Wizard of Oz, where they're telling you Dorothy she's home, and earlier in that, when Drawley set up the Canaanite temple, he says, you're home. And he says the Europeans 3,000 miles from home, he's going to take on a lot of water. The symbolism is really a statement of the truth. Once you get really acclimated back in your mind that you're home, your energy changes, and nature is sort of like the vibrational energies that nature herself has there waiting. It's sort of like you moving, and in that vibration state, nature starts healing, connecting the wires, because we're jumbled. The priesthood has jumbled your wire system, but they've done it metaphorically and they've done it metaphysically. But you are a wired system. And all the things that we build in the physical realm is still based on your body. All of our structures are still based on your body or your body functions. Go ahead.
Islam is when you talk about the wires, the priesthood wiring us, is that all part of the doctrine of discovery?
Well, the doctrine of discovery is really a bulla operation by the popes of Rome against the Moors and Jews. When we say Moors and Jews, is really Moors and Yahudi. And this has to do with Inquisition operations of world conquest and then declaring themselves as God, which is really what's going on this planet. Which is why this is the issue, because this must be unraveled. It's sort of like, you know, like you get a headache, and it's not unlike a chick maturing and needing to break the egg shell. And that's a traumatic period, but the chick must come out or die. Is what you're going through. That's us here. Clear. Some are out and came back to help others. That's all that's going on here. Some are out and came back to feed on you. That's also what's going on here. Then there's some trying to protect you from the feeders. That's also what's going on here. That's what's going on here in the House of Reawakening Minds, trying to protect the people from the feeders. In truth. You understand? Mm-hmm. For them to feed on you, this is why this corruption is in place. Are we clear? It seems anthropologically and geometrically provably incorrect in the concept that people have. However, it has a greater imposition cause, which means the imposition of its misrepresentation is highly calculated and deliberate. What they call drawing line. Because one of the things that the priesthood have done in Inquisition operations, like for instance, like say Scipio, Africanus, that's called drawing the line. So when they conquered lower Asia, they would take the name of the people and crown. That was part of the trophy. So people who really don't know the history say, well, Africa was named after Scipio, after they defeated the Moors, after they defeated Hannibal, Barca and Hasdrubal. Then Scipio Africanus conquered Africa, and so they called it Africa after him. No, it's not. No, he takes on the name as a conquest. The same way when under the Inquisition operation, when the Custodians and Aragonians under the Spanish Inquisition conquered the Moors, they came here and they called themselves Americans. They're not Americans. If they get you to call them Americans, they win. If they keep you from recognizing that they're not Americans, they win. It seems subtle, it isn't. It is key to birthright theft. Are we clear? And people who really don't know the history, you can make that presentment of information to them, and they'll look at it and they'll say, well, yeah, that's true, but they really still don't get what's really going on. They'll acknowledge the corruption, but not know the depth of its initiation purpose. Go ahead.
Speaking of that, in the DAR manual, Daughters American Revolution Manual for Citizenship, in which you provided, and I made a master copy of it, I went through and read it, and there's a lot of truth and half truth and little fairy tale stories in here.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it's a guide for their new society. This is how you should behave in our new society. And I think the third paragraph is the beginning of America. I think this is like probably one of the truth paragraphs.
This is what I want you to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now pay attention to this. Now, I want you to read that.
Okay.
Then I want you to analyze the connotative linguistic structure for what they call drawing the line.
Gotcha.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is
Let people know that's what you're reading from.
Okay, I'm reading from the DAR Manual for Citizenship, published as a public service by the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution, which is a spinoff from the Connecticut Daughters of American Revolution.
Now you see why they have Connecticut at Winona's statue.
That's right.
Up there at the Mound in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And while some of the stone that was built for the obelisk and for the structure of George Washington's memorial come from Massachusetts and Connecticut.
Yes, which is the same place that the Moabite stone came from.
Continue.
Page 1, they give you a capital of the United States of America in Washington, D.C. So that lets you know that this is their District of Columbia. And it says the beginning of America. I'm just going to jump down to 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth paragraph, because the first 3 paragraphs is a connotative lie. But the fourth paragraph was interesting. It states, European governments promoted colonization in various parts of what is now the United States. The Spanish in Florida and California, the French in the Mississippi Valley, the Dutch in New York, the Swedes in Delaware, and the Germans in Pennsylvania. Many of the colonists came from England, and the English language became the language of the new country. But the King of England was the ruler of these colonists even after they came to America until this day.
Yeah. Now, the deal of this, they're saying and they're not saying.
Yes.
Number one, that ain't the beginning of America.
Exactly.
That's part of the conquest of America.
That's the conquest.
Now, and so they're claiming America.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
As if they constructed
As if they
America.
constructed America.
And America's continent.
Exactly.
But at the same time, they're presented in the concept that it's the country.
This is their grafting in on what already exists, the land that exists.
Not just that.
Mm-hmm.
You've got dual misrepresentation because it's represented as a country.
There you go.
And it's represented as it began with them.
Exactly.
America was there. America's the land. You see how they're claiming? Now, when you receive that information, you actually imprint them as the sovereign, subconscious mind.
Now, I want to read
Go
also
ahead.
just a paragraph. You said pull out the lesson book 5. And lesson book 5 is called Breaking the Chains of Slavery. The Moors Rise from Civil Death. Moors Order of the Round Table, Civic Lesson number 5, written by Grand Sheikh Tarik Bey and edited by Brother Abdullah El Talib Mosey Bey. I'm going to go to chapter 8. And this is called the Unconstitutional Fourth Amendment by Brother Abdullah El Talib Mosey Bey.
14th. You said 14th?
14th Amendment.
Yes.
The Unconstitutional 14th Amendment. I'm going to skip down on here. It's page 41. And it reads, who are the colonial jurists unjustified self-governing powers that has conferred citizenship to the Union State Society upon the Brandon Moors? They are English males who are the only true citizens of the United States of America, excluding all others, even the English women. The English males joined forces with France, Scotland, German, Ireland, and Holland, Dutch, to defend the Moors and to perpetuate the Moors' enslavement under colonization. Now colony is cleverly disguised as the state.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
So when you read that paragraph and read it,
you can see.
You can see.
It's not that it's hidden.
It's not hidden.
So
hopefully we will, if Grand Sheikh grant permission, we can get some of these lesson book 5 reprinted for your purchase.
now some of that's in there, but the identity crisis is part of what this is. That's not in there.
I know.
Yeah.
With your permission?
Yes. But what is there?
With your permission?
Remember we did that. Remember when we were at the college, right?
Right.
Right? On Broad Street. The permission was given then. Things didn't work out the way you planned, but
we gonna talk
was
about that because you know we
can't talk about that.
But I'm just saying, you're asking what was already done.
Gotcha.
That didn't stop you from doing what you're supposed to do.
You're right. You're right.
Because that's,
It's already ready.
yeah, thank you.
Okay.
All right, and then, I'll just put the rest of the stuff in there. That's what I told you.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you got that.
Got it. That's
You
right.
know, and again, it's even back to like your evolutionary development and others. The deal is I intelligently recognize that I can't do everything even that I do. I got other stuff that's piled up that I even put out because it'll be distracting. Because what is laid out ain't even totally absorbed. But I see that it's more absorbed now than 86 to 92 when most of that work was done, and then we decided to publish it. You understand? And then we published it around 96.
Yeah, this is quite.
You understand? And even then, there were snippets brought out in order to make the publishing economically and effectively feasible. So much of that stuff, as you can see, is snippets from other work.
I see.
But it was done for the effect. Some of that's from the superliminal, which is 12. Some of that's from the Order of the Great Seal, Chief Justice, Muali, Ben Bay, are 3. Stuff that people have never even seen. You understand? But we put it out for effect. Then the other deal was, from a metaphysical point of view, we put it out numerically out of sequence. Why? Because we already knew in projection that it would be stolen. And that some people would use it, like for instance, Dr. York used Lesson Book 14 to formulate the New Orleans. Do you understand what I'm saying? It took 3 paragraphs. But I already knew they was going to do it. So that's why they're out of sequence, so they get caught. Like people say, Why the book, where's number, is 1,
I know it said 1,
then
3.
there's,
I thought maybe you was just going with the Jacob's ladder thing. I don't know.
no,
Okay.
it's a battle, it's chess. Because like I told you, what I would do is I would, sort of like, when you kind of see stuff a little bit, you simply go up, look back, and knowing your own weaknesses, knowing your own shortcomings and acknowledging them. You know that you're dealing with an organized body of dark priesthood that's been organized and financed for hundreds of years. You're dealing with master wizards. You're not just dealing with a few people that got different opinions. Not only will they physically kill you, they throw psychic attacks that knock you off, and they attack people who are close to you. That's how they operate. So how do you get through them, survive long enough to get information to the people when you know that you're a target? So you've got to go ahead of them, look back, and make chess moves and hope you're right. But you got to get past the point of hoping, and you got to get to the point of knowing. And not fearing what they call death. That's the only time you can beat them. But at the same time, you also know that they will attack people who are close to you. And that they will use people, even set people up, send them to you. Do you understand? To so-called help, or to love you. And you bite the apple. Don't mean you can't spit it out. You just don't swallow like Glenn says. I didn't inhale. And I'm just being honest with you. And then you are learning to respect yourself. Even though you are weak, even though you have sincere shortcomings, but you must acknowledge them. That's when nature respects you. When you acknowledge your own shortcomings. And then whatever you do, do it with sincere goodwill. And it's sort of like conceptually, and it's not a self-righteous statement, it's just the truth how nature works. Do something that's right because it's right, not because you're looking for a reward. Once you look for a reward, it's contaminated and nature moves you out. She does not, and you can play all you want to, but what you can't do is fool her. And that's the battle that you have with yourself. You know what I mean? And from a personal perspective, you know, it's because certain things you already know, but you go against because you want to do things. You know what I mean? So my weakness is family. My weakness is the elusive butterfly. My weakness is coming here knowing I was never to get married. With all the determination that I'm getting married. Give me a nice house and, you know, because I came here with skills already. Build me this beautiful mansion, have children, and be in love forever type stuff when I knew better. No, that's personal. But I'm just being honest with you. Knowing it was going to be taken. And then have the nerve to be upset when it was taken. As if I didn't know better. But that's not for everybody, because everybody's not here for the same purpose. You get the whole point? You understand? But some, now that has to do with past responsibilities that I neglected. You know what I'm saying? So I had to, because you're going to fix it anyway. You're going to do whatever has to be done, whether you got to come back or not. You know what I mean? But I always have this fixation of, matrimony, white picket fence type thing, build this beautiful house and custom furniture, art and everything, stuff that I'm capable of doing and being happy. Knowing that I was told no, not now. It's not that you can't, it's not now. Oh no, I'm gonna do what I want to do. Well, being honest with you, you know, like it's sort of like when you kind of understand some of the rules of nature and some of the rules in the what you would call the circles of the planets, and because you know certain things, you walk on the edge because you can. Not necessarily intentionally being defiant, but being defiant. You're just not admitting that you are. Do you understand? Just don't break the rules. You know, that type of thing. Well, I have to be honest with you, that's the time you got. And I paid for it. Then I had the nerve to feel sorry for myself. And I didn't have that right. Then I had to overcome that. And then I would go right and do it again. Because that's what I wanted. You know, until I accepted that I was being selfish. Truthfully. And then also knowing, for the protection of people around me, making my connections limited so that they can't get them. You know, if they know that you love someone, they will attack them. So therefore, I love, but I'm disconnected. That's a personal, and then you got to deal with that. Yeah. But that's my life. That's, you know, you've got to come to whatever realization of your imprint, whatever you're sent here for, you've got to start knowing yourself. And you've got to respect that. And this is also coming to the realization with a lot of the humans here, is that they need to be made aware that their lives, most of their lives, have been identified by Job, that you see in the Torah, in the Bible. They are not themselves. Meaning that your life is pretty much molded around your Job, that you call job, not knowing that you're actually being controlled by the priesthood, that you've actually been enslaved by the priesthood under the guise of religion, and that when you know, like you get up in the morning, right? You know, they start you at childhood. You're going to get a job, you're going to get married, go out and work, and get a house. You know, the usual thing. You're trained to that. That's not nature, that's training. Are we clear? Clear. Most people live miserable lives and don't know why they're miserable. And it's mostly because they're working in jobs that they really don't like, but they need to live. And so they're doing that, and after a while forget that what they're doing is not who they are. And they live most of their lives to serve themselves to a position that they call a job, to get paid, which they're never paid. But their concept is to receive the basic emoluments of life that are by divine rule and law, they're owned by birthright, but is being sold to them in trade of their labor, by occupation, by dark priesthood who they thought and think is their government and their priests, who are actually a network of priesthood. All of them are priests who have made themselves God on the planet and actually enslaved humanity. And it does not negate your self-responsibility to toil, to work, but to understand its proper placement. Clear. Clear. And that you are not put here to work to live. I mean, to live to work. You work to live. They have people unconsciously actually living to work. And so most people live their lives around Job, when Job has actually taken the true principle of God away from you, made you curse your God, which is really within. And so again, when you really understand the dark side of psychic attacks done by the priesthood, most people live their lives never recognizing that. Never recognizing that. Much of their sickness evolves from that mental disorder vibration that creates sickness too. So much of the sicknesses come from mental, not necessarily from outside, I caught a cold. Yes or no? You really need to understand how this stuff works. And so, and then of course the priesthood controls the medical industry, which is really a weapon. It really is, you know. So, as an example, let's look at this. Just think. You grow up, somebody tells you, you know, you've got to work to eat, or you're not going to eat. You got to work to live, or you're not going to live. And so you go get a degree, because that's the rule. And you enslave yourself while doing it. Right? So you got to work now, because you're in debt. Now, Rev already told you in debt, you're guilty for living, born in sin, so you're already guilty for living. He's the collector, but he's the man God of man, technically. You know, so, and so they start you off that way. But when you think about it, right? The average being. Now we could get into the issue, even the dynamics of how the work week evolved politically. That's another thing in its own right. It's a story in its own right. But just look at the principle. So the average person, we're trained for Job in the Bible. That's what job is. The long O, short O, that's what Job is. You never think about it, right? 8 hours sleep, right? 8 hours on your job, right? How many hours in a day? 24? How much is 8, 8, and 8?
24.
So now, 8 hours sleep, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, because usually stressed. Right? Then, hold on, 2 hours or so traveling to or for work. Another hour preparing yourself. So just saying being safe in general, being efficient. You got 6 hours to be with your mate and your family. And you're usually stressed with your work or spending some of that time preparing to go back to work. You have sleep, you come home. You know, your wife or your mate, you know, she's irritated because she's been bored as hell home all day, and you've been out, or even if she's working too, because you need to do that now because they made it that way. That's by design too. So you actually grow apart anyway. And so you're not really made it to the person, you made it to your job, but you think you're made it to the person because you got a contract. Not knowing that that contract is a bodily instrument for the corporate state to claim your estate when one of you gets sick or die. That's what it really is for. Right? That's why they set up the pathonetary's office. Right? That people keep thinking is their loyal government. Because they're not going on that they're actually instituted into servitude. They think this is normal living. So most of the JOBs, they go into to try to make what they would call a decent living. Notice that word, that phrase, living, making a living. It's not really exactly that. So 9 times out of 10, I say, I just met you last week. I'm just so impressed with you and stuff. So now next week I got to get together because I'm going to ask you to matrimony, and we're going to take you to Hershey Park and stuff. We're going to ride on the roller coasters, get you all excited and everything. You're confused now. Unless you're scared. Will you marry me and shit? And then many things get out of this, but anyway, we'll be having a little bit of fun. We'll do this, right? And the real deal is, over the period of years, you actually end up having very little time with each other. 9 times out of 10, you start dealing with people who are in your immediate communication, whether it's on a job or whatever else. And so most people's marriages don't work anyway. Not because the principle of your intent is not honorable, it's because the structure is not designed for it to be successful. It's designed to create confusion, sickness, and finance for the corporate state that actually belongs to some people who are generating finance, having nothing to do with what you think it has to do. That includes Reverend Pigfoot throwing rice in your eyes so you can forget what he just did to you. You know what I mean? And you never dawns on you that this is a bank bond and that he's taking it to vital statistics. You just paid him, he get paid again. But he also, in order to preserve his karmic response, cause and effect, by the power vested in me by the state of Delaware, I pronounce you man and wife. So he just told you he's a state agent, so he didn't lie. Then he go to church and tell you it's the separation of church and state. That's the part he wants you to believe. See, what you got rights in your eyes, but it never dawned on you. He just told you by the power that his power didn't come from the God in heaven, it came from the corporate state. He's a 501c3 operative. Hiding behind the name Jesus, God, Allah, whatever flavor ice cream you're into. No, it's the truth. But you're not supposed to recognize that. Are we clear? It's a sacred cow.
Clear.
Bullshitsky-dorf, but it's a sacred cow. And that's just a part of why most marriages doesn't work, but it's never examined. That's aside from the other stresses. Are we clear?
Clear.
And then because people are on an evolutionary scale by their nature, they outgrow each other anyway. And so you get together because you want to make this last forever, but when it really boils down, you're never with each other except for a couple hours. And 9 times out of 10, both of you stressed out from this work that you're doing that neither one of you really damn like. Truthfully. And then you're trying to hold on to things that belong to you naturally, like a house. Because if you don't work, then they'll throw you out your house that was already paid for by your grandmother that you inherited, that the state's still taxing you on. And it never dawns on you that they're taxing you on personal property, which means you're not allowed to own property. And it never dawns on you that you're in servitude. Meanwhile, the little stresses that take place, you start taking that on each other. I don't know, Tam, you know daggone well that I don't eat pork bacon. You know you're supposed to buy turkey bacon, but you were sleepy and pain in the head and everything, and you picked up the wrong package. Now you're fussing. You know, and little things like that, and it builds up. Right? Then I used to buy you flowers. Then all of a sudden, you know you like tulips. Now I get petunias. They look pretty, but they stink. You know, so you thinking, well, he did that to be smart. I know he did. And not necessarily. He's just, I'm rushing like everything looked pretty to me. I knew it was so. I thought I stepped in something when I got in the car. You know, the petunias, they look pretty. What the hell? You know, and little things become big things on long term. Yeah, and so most marriages don't work because marriages are not even what we think they are. Like, for instance, matrimony, which is harmonic with nature and real culture. Marriage was set up by the priesthood. It really deals with the planet Mars, the letter I, which is the 9th letter of the alphabet, and rage. It's a curse. That's why marriages don't work, and priests already know that. And they're always there in the background to tutor you when the problems occur. They're working for the state. And then when you break up the head, they come in and getting some of the estate. Oh yeah, and plus, you didn't know that the marriage certificate is also claimed by the Popes of Rome for the eggs in the womb. So the state owns the children. And when they want to, they come take people's children. People say, yeah, they came, he kicked the dirt out, took my children and stuff. They didn't even have a court order. They didn't need one. That's just to keep you thinking that things work for you. They already claimed them eggs with the marriage certificate that you thought was with Jesus. That Reverend Pickford told you was a solemn oath of divinity, of love, of heaven with the Lord. Lords of London, Secret Treaty of Rome. But not unlike other things, these things must be exposed because you, yourself, you must reject Rome. You must reject the institutions that Rome set up. That's not anti-government, that's anti-alien. De facto. That's the wolf. Ain't my grandma. No, you ain't tell me that's a new wig. And that you just got your nails done. I'm not impressed. And plus you're furry. You know, you rob Little Red Riding Hood, the Red Riding, that ain't accidental. Red Riding Hood. Right? So she's going out, skipping through the woods with baskets and biscuits and shit. Mind the business and come past his grandma's house and everything. Damn, bro. You in the plastic surgery, granny and shit? Man, what sharp teeth you got? They're my new dentures. All right. New wig and shit. Yeah. Fur, you need a pedicure, your feet are sticking out under the blanket, and they really, and it indicates naivety, right? Mm-hmm. So here comes Little Red Riding Hood back home, ain't got no biscuits in the basket. Her Little Red Riding Hood and stuff is, jalabo and stuff is all dirty and all to the side, and she's pregnant. But this swell. Grandma, right? And the symbolism is people's willingness to be naive in the face of evidence. That's what that symbolizes. And, playing dumb gets you in trouble. And you don't have to be dumb, it's just that you're ignoring common sense because you don't respect common sense. Because common sense is a nature's defense system. With belief systems, they get you to reject common sense. Why? Common sense harmonizes with common law. Common law harmonizes and is attached to your allegiance to your ancient mothers and fathers' principles of honor, which is why common law trumps legislative law when presented in argument. You gotta look at how this stuff really ties together. But if these things are not told to people who are under that mental training, they start respecting the institutions that is created by people who are claiming to be your government more than their common sense, and submit to it and keep losing. And one of the keys is just like the wolf, with Little Red Riding Hood. The colonists claim to be Americans, and you have not challenged them. That's who you are. In their door manual. Call them who they are. And don't be making, it's not an insult. It's just don't let them steal your birthright, because that's what they came here for. Like the people will say, well, they came here to steal our gold and silver. Well, guess what? That ain't all. Or clear? Clear. Book of Genesis. Steal your birthright. For a bowl of red pottage.
They say in here they were looking for.
Get in the mic, because we can't hear you. I can hear you, but they can't hear you. Go ahead, read.
It's funny you say that, because the first paragraph, it reads of the Dark Manual, in the 15th century, several European nations were looking for an all-water route to the Indies because the chief trade routes using land caravans as well as sailing vessels were complicated and high priced, which means they had to pay tribute on high seas.
Exactly. Now you see why they call us Indians.
Exactly.
When they finally got here, and where were they going? They were trying to get to Cinder. Where did Pedro navigate their ships to the last of the Atlantis Islands, which is now Puerto Rico, Dominica, Haiti, etc.
Rich ports.
Yes. If you understand what you're looking at, if you understand the geography, and you understand the politics, you understand the social engineering, your job is to weave through that yarn, clean it up, and unravel that ball, and expose it to all, and expose it to the children. Because as long as they hold on to these agencies and institutions that they thought was grandmama, grandmother, the sovereign, the matriarchy, they trust, and they put their trust in her. The wolf.
Well, speaking of geographies, I think some people also need to know that America is more than one continent.
America is, let's clear this up. America is one continent with adjoining islands. South America, Central America, North America is one continent from the northern hemisphere of the earth unto the southern hemisphere of the earth. People keep forgetting that the Panama Canal is artificial.
From like the isthmus.
It's one continent, and Americana are your islands in the Pacific and in the Atlantis. So how do they hide? This is their land. They're on the line. They call the Moros of Philippines under Philip. They're not Filipinos. They're Moros. Or go in your dictionary. Or that dictionary. I want to show you how simple this stuff is. I want to show you how simple this stuff is. Mustafa.
Dictionary over your head. I'll finish the paragraph. It's indicated there was a demand for many Far Eastern products, particularly spices, which was necessary for seasoning and preserving foods. And it was important to find a way to the Spice Island by sea.
Now they were trying to take over. It was not only that. It's called what you see, what you hear being brought up today in the politics, the old Silk Road that they're trying to block. This battle that they're doing with China, Russia, Hindustan, what you call India, the restoration of the old Silk Road, the resetting of the world economic system. What is that really? It's decolonization. See, you got to know what you're really looking at, not what they're telling you. But if you don't know the history and fundamental jurisprudence, you will follow the narrative that they present to you in mainstream media and actually work against your own interests. Are we clear? Interesting thing, a lot of people I've talked to, a lot of these Asiatics, mad at Trump when they should be helping him.
That's right.
It's because they really don't understand the politics. And that's not defending Trump. Do you understand what I'm saying? If they understand the politics, they would be cheering him on, even though he's still battling over their estate. Do you understand? Based on the truth of the operations of structured government, Donald Trump is of a higher quality of man than the entire Democratic Party representatives put together in a package.
You got qualified that target, they're going to take
I already know. But remember, I don't have to wait till next year necessarily for it to manifest. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So, you know, some things you say, some things you don't say, because you know people start throwing their old sneaks at you. Oh no, this is the old Michael Jordans. Let me get these old Converse. Todd guy, you know, call you Jim Crow, they'll call you Tom, Uncle Tom, and everything. It's because they don't know the politics. They don't know the history. Their concepts are wrong because they don't know what they're dealing with. Their concepts is that they've been living under constitutional protections, and Donald Trump is messing it up when he's really trying to restore that which was overthrown. They'll call it cleaning the swamp. Do you understand? Now that's not making him, you know, goody, you know, angel savior type guy. It's just that Donald Trump has no choice on another level. Some of what he's doing because of whatever good character is in him. The other part, if he doesn't do what he does, it's over for them. And so just because they're used to ruling and robbing everybody around the world, does not mean that the world is going to continue to tolerate them. You understand? So one of the things, even though the nations can't beat the Pope's army, which is the United States Corporation, run from Washington, D.C., military complex, like you'll hear them make statements like Eisenhower said, when they supposed to have been relinquishing jurisdiction at Morocco, what they did is relinquish jurisdiction in parts of Tunisia, Algeria, and the Kingdom of Morocco, but not at the headstone, or what you call the keystone, I here in North America. And then he closed down consular courts, so that the people, if they figured this out, would not have remedy. Because they would be subject to the barristers municipal court system for denationalization rather than Article 3 consular courts for diversity. You know, so you need to understand Eisenhower's position, who's German Dutchman. And then he said, beware of the congressional, write this down because you must remember this. Beware of the congressional military industrial complex. Dwight D. Eisenhower said,
Congression.
beware of the congressional military industrial complex. And they'll write in history, they'll take the congressional word off that statement and say that Eisenhower said, beware of the military industrial complex. And that's not what he said. He said the congressional military industrial complex. What is he talking about? He's talking about the Act of Congress, 1871. They set up a kingship oligarchy for themselves. And so the deal is people keep looking at the Federal Reserve, right? Well, the Federal Reserve did this, the Federal Reserve did that, and the Federal Reserve did this, and the Federal Reserve did that, and the Federal Reserve is doing quantitative easing and crap like that, right? Right? And they'll say, well, the corporations are doing this, and the corporations are doing that, and the military complex is doing all these wars around the world, and making up stories and stuff, and then dropping these buildings in New York when Germany came after their gold, and then said that Saddam Hussein and that Bin Laden did it and from a cave with a box knife in the cave in Afghanistan and shit. When really it was them. Because Germany came after their gold, because Germany knows they're full of crap, and they've been stealing everybody's gold. So Germany sent diplomats to go check on their gold in New York, and they told them to take a hike. A couple days later, the buildings dropped. But they already planned that anyway. Do you understand what I'm saying? Even one of the trucks were caught underground that got collapsed on. You know, because there's a tunnel underneath those buildings that went directly to the chambers of the Federal Reserve. But the Federal Reserve belongs to the folks of Rome. And so does the United States Corporation. So that's exercising the secret treaty of Rome. So when you know the real history, you know BS when you see it, but you know that the masses are controlled by the narrative, whatever is in the mainstream news. Are we clear? Cut and dry and cut through the chase, the issue with you. When I say you, that's us collectively, those of you who are listening and us here, and why we do what we do. It's incumbent on you in divine nature to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. What that really means is that you must reject Caesar's institutions. And Caesar is symbolic of not of Julius Caesar, but of the Roman ruler clanship itself that have declared themselves gods of the earth, in harmony with what you see in the book of Thessalonians 1 and 2, in the Torah, in the Bible, and Septuaginta. Are we clear? So when you hear the phrase, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, that's what it really means. It's not past tense, it's now. And so you won't reject what you don't comprehend as being not of your own. So like for instance, like in the book of John 8, in around 44, in that area. Can you take your healed cover?
What's that? 8:44.
John 8:44. Yeah, I see y'all over there eating. All I got is a napkin. Dunkin' Donuts, and it's ringing. Duh. But really, duh.
You want to go morals first, or you want to go John?
All right, go ahead. I want you to go ahead and read.
He's going to do morals.
Oh, do your thing. Go where the Spirit leads you. Go ahead.
Moral is a noun. Plural is morals. Spanish, amor. Malay tribes living in the South Philippines. The Malay language, adjective of the morals.
And just like when you look at, like say you look at India, and they'll say Mohammedans. These are different codes that they're just telling you they're their own wars. But you need to know what you're looking at. Do you understand? Now, and so this is part of what you would call identity theft. Now, if you don't understand that it's about birthright theft, it's about colonial operations, it looks like historical reconstructed misrepresentation, and that's not nice to do. But you're not looking at how deep it really goes. And they don't want you to see it. All clear. So a lot of work that we're doing here is decolonization. The Moorish movement in its nature is decolonization. And I present to you the sincere argument that it's not looked at that way by most people. And that those who are aware of what it really is are usually attacked by many others who claim to love Noble Drale and are holding positions of alleged authority. They were put in power to make law and they do everything but that.
John.
Go ahead.
8.
No, please tell the people what you're reading from so they'll know.
This is the Biblioheliotext.
Yes. Commonly known as the Bible.
The Holy Bible.
Yes. That means sun book. Go ahead.
John 8. And this is the St. John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John 8 and 44. Ye are of your father, the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it.
That's the Inquisition operations and covering the line and identity theft. Go ahead. Get the mic.
I had something for you. I can't read it, but I had it for you. I just wanted to read it out.
Appreciate you.
All right. I'll wait for you to come back. I know you can read it off.
Swiss Indo Office of Military Settlement. Oh, OMS, yeah. PDF file. You want me to copy this?
You can have it.
All right.
You can have it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. But I'm going to copy it anyway, make sure I get it back to you. And
No, I know where to get it. You can,
all right, all right.
You can have my board for you.
Much appreciated. Now, the point that I'm making to you is a lot of people, when they come here to the House of Reawakening Minds, you know, sometimes you got to back up and tell people why you're doing certain things you're doing, because some things seem out of sequence of what their interests may be or what they think you should be dealing with. But when you go ahead, if you go ahead and then look back at people, you can see it, and it's no different than the anxiety of activating chakras when they haven't crossed the lower ladders. You know what I mean? And not unlike what we talked about a month ago, when we talked about the picture of you see Yashir, when you see Yashir with his jalabu open and they'll show the heart. They make a lot of pictures of him with his jalabu open and you'll see his heart. You know, and they say, oh, Jesus, is the heart of love of God. And no, it's really the heart chakra. And it's really symbolic, meaning that you must come to that degree at least to the Christ degree, and that all men do that, not just him. He's just symbolic of what the work that you must do. And some of you will reach higher chakras, which means some of you will do greater works than I have done. And this is what it means when he says, what I am, all men shall be. What I've done, all men can do. And some of you will even do greater works than I have done. Instead of learning the lesson from him, they start worshiping him, which is not why he came. Do you understand? This is our problem. And you have the same problem with Overdraw Lake. Even some people will call him Jesus come again. You? But the deal is you must understand the message. They are redeemers. And just like we see Prophet Muhammad, you know, even with the corruption with all of them, they got lower selves too. You understand? What did he come for? To complete the cycle of Esau. He came to complete the work of Jesus. Matter of fact, they were cousins. And yet people who don't really understand this look at Prophet Muhammad and Jesus as two different figures, no relationship, totally different philosophies. No, they're both of Canaanite and Moabite blood. And the same missionary work. But yet, the way it's presented to the people, they look at them as totally different, philosophical and everything. Their bloodline can be traced. You understand? Even Yeshua's body, the one that they call Yeshua, is in Srinagar, Hindustan, in India, to this day. They'll say, this trial of Turin and all that stuff, that ain't got nothing to do with it. His physical body is in Srinagar, in Hindustan, that you call India, in a glass case with 4 gold pillars. And priesthood, who meets their highest degrees of masonry around the world, according to how they rise, under certain conditions, are allowed to go see his form. And he got skin like burnished brass and hair like lamb's wool. And his grandmother's Ruth, and she's more white too. And he's more too. It's no big deal. It's not unknown, it's just not taught. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? But people's concept is to worship him rather than understand the lessons of reformation that are brought by all the prophets. That's why, like on your nationality card, read on your nationality card. Anybody got a nationality card? Read your nationality card. Oh, and then you can go ahead to that. I want you to pay attention to this because people in the temples and people outside the temples, they you know, like people say things and don't pay attention to what they're saying. Or read the back. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Give him the mic. You got the mic?
I got the mic.
All right. Be like Mike. Go ahead.
This nationality and identification card bears the great seal of the Moroccan Empire. The bearer of this card is a Moorish American national, in proprio persona, aboriginal, indigenous to the Northwest, a Mexican, Southwest of Mexico, Northwest Africa, North America, the North Gate, including Central America, South America, and the adjoining islands. Americano. The bearer of this card is a Muslim under the divine principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Honor the divine laws of the great Quran of Muhammad and all the divine prophets, all Muhammad, Jesus, Buddha, and Confucius, Moorish American nationals, uphold and enforce the supreme law, the divine principles, beloved within North American Republic, the Constitution for the United States.
Now, that's a great seal identification card. Now, the point that I'm making to you, if you read Nationality card from the Moorish Science Temple of America, is more brief than that, and it'll tell you.
This is your nationality.
Yes, go ahead.
An identification card for the Moorish Science Temple of America, and birthrights for the Moorish Americans, etc. We honor all the divine prophets, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Confucius. May the blessings of the God of our Father, Allah, be upon you that carry this card. I do hereby declare that you are a Muslim under the divine laws of the Holy Quran of Mecca, love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And of course, in all caps, I am a citizen of the USA.
And right to the charter is Unity, Salvation, Allah.
Unity, Salvation, Allah. Noble Drew Ali, the prophet, in the home office. This temple, the home office, 1445 Constitution Avenue, Northeast, Washington, D.C., 20002.
Now, the point that I want to make to you, you notice how on the nationality card, it's Muhammad, Jesus, Buddha, and Confucius. You ask the average brother and sister in the temple to give you the Kabbalistic philosophy of the Ascension order, of the Brahmic priesthood, and they won't even begin to march in that direction. But it's on their nationality card. So you see, by the problem that you have with people they refer to as Great Seal Moors and Temple Moors, which is a schism operation, but the deal of it is why it exists. People who study are attacked by those who don't, thinking that you're doing something different. When they're charged with the same thing, they just haven't exercised it. So certain subject matter that we may touch on in a place like this, they would never even breathe near it in temples. Because the grand sheiks and sheikhesses will not allow it. Why? Because they don't want their people to develop. Why? Because it will take their hands out of their pockets. They will have to produce something or leave them alone. And rather than produce schools, businesses, etc., they enslave them and then condemn Moors who are out here enforcing that constitution, which should have been done decades ago. And then people will see it, look at it as divisions. Well, it is, but it isn't the way they think it is. It's not based on opinion, it's based on treason within. But unless you know a background, you don't recognize it for what it is. You just think it's people arguing with different opinions, rather than recognizing that you have traitors who've been ruling within this order that are really conversos. Go ahead, good brother.
Well, this is just in an effort to support truth. And a lot of times as we come up through the circle, nobody will even hear you unless you come from the quote, good book, unquote. So on Brother Taj's, the Grand Sheik, the Emir, Your Grace, your comment about Ruth the Moabitess and the bloodline of Yeshua and he being Moabite, the scripture that affirms that is Matthew 1. So for your listeners out there, you go on and get your Bible for the scripture quoting Bible token people that you engage. And tell them to turn it to Matthew chapter 1 and begin the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the book of the generations of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac, and Isaac begot Jacob, and Jacob begot Judas and his brethren, and Judas begot Phares and Zerah of Tamir, and Phares begot Hezron, and Hezron begot Ram. And verse 4, and Ram begot Aminadab, and Aminadab begot Nahshon, and Nahshon begot Salmon, and Salmon begot Boaz of Rahab, and Boaz begot Obed of Ruth. And Obed begot Jesse, and Jesse begot David the king, and David the king begot Solomon, and it goes all the way down until you get to Jesus. The point is, it gives the whole genealogy of this bloodline of Yeshua. And it clearly points out in the bloodline someone called Ruth the Moabitess. And I yield the floor.
And then you'll see around it's usually 3 and 9. What is 3 and 9? 3 and 9. 9,
verse 3 is...
No, 3 and 9.
Of which chapter? Matthew?
12.
Matthew.
Now look at the 39th book in that Bible.
All right.
Enumerate the books.
Yeah. So you're in the Old Testament now, you're 39.
And you know the...
I already know Malachi. So he's at Malachi, and it is chapter 4, and the verse is 2. We in your Bible. Now the way you present this is you tell the Bible toter to close his eyes, and you just read to him and then ask a question. And the question you're going to ask is, who's the Son of Righteousness? And it reads as thus. Chapter 4 and verse 2. But unto you, this Malachi 4 and 2 is the last book of the Old Testament, right before the book of Matthew, the first book of the New. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings, and ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. And the question you ask your Bible-believing friend in totality at a lower level,
spell son,
is to number one, what is the Son? Who is the Son of Righteousness? And they're going to say Jesus. And then you say no.
Correct.
Spell Son.
S-U-N.
And it's spelled S-U-N.
Repeat.
Son is spelled S-U-N.
Is it hidden?
It is not. It is clear as day. Crystal.
Now, if they don't know the cosmological directive, the 72 scholars that did the modification for the popes of Rome and did the Septuaginta out of the Book of the Dead and the ancient scripts of Ekuta, etc., that later become the Bible, they call it Septuaginta, which means 7, although it was 72 scholars. But they keep it at 7. That's for the energy. And so Septuaginta, the Septuagint is your first Bibles. Now, of course, they don't want the people to know that it's cosmology and that the Son of God is the sun in the sky. So that way, as the closeout of the Old Testimony or the Old Testament or the Torah, etc., they release their karmic debt by telling the truth. Although they still tell it in allegorical form. Because they're not unaware that they put the world to sleep. But nature doesn't play with them. And they already know the rules. So they just told the truth. They say, what? The Son of God. The Son of Righteousness arises with healing in his wings. So that means when you become aware of the Son of God, really aware, she starts healing you. But it ain't really masculine in the sense that you think it is. Either. Dr. Nail, give her the phone, please.
The phone.
I mean the phone.
I'll take it.
Microphone.
I just wanted to read the NIV version.
Yes, go ahead.
It says, but for you who revere my name, the Son of Righteousness will arise with healing in its rays.
Yes.
Which is
wings.
Yeah, but
the rising.
Yeah, but the rays, you know how we talk about the sun rays?
Yeah.
It doesn't say wings, they say healing in its rays.
And this is also why they will not teach the Septuaginta in its Hebraic form.
Yeah,
because in Hebraic form, most of the stuff that they translated into what they call Anglus is not totally valid.
That's right.
Yeah, so I just want to point that out to you.
Islam. And the Septuaginta that you speak of, it is taught as a translation of the Aramaic, or after Babylonian captivity, the Hebrew, into what they call Greek. And we can go a whole story on Greek, real or not, but that Septuaginta is that supposed to represent that Greek translation
And the original before the Bible exists the way people get it today.
That's right. Of the old, so-called Old Testament.
Yeah.
And so I yield the floor.
Now, so the point is, isn't it interesting how these people get away with all these generations of doing what they call Bible study and never tell these people about Septuaginta?
Yes.
Isn't it interesting?
Yes, it is.
And that's foundation to the Bible, but it ain't foundation to itself.
Sure.
It's foundation to the book of the dead. The book of the day, the dead, and the opening up of the mouth. You know, so then you're going into not just on that side, you're also going into the mouth of the Grand Canyon. The chambers that are there even unto Philadelphia, that has chambers beneath. That city's over there is built on chambers. Oh yeah.
You saw that in the movie.
Oh, National Treasury?
Yeah, National Treasury.
Nicolas Cage, 1 and 2. Yeah. Because they're also telling you that Egypt is here.
Islam.
Yeah, but I mean, they always say. And then they take you to Philadelphia House, and he pulls out a brick, masonry, mason. And he does it like this, 4 corners.
Yep.
Pulls out, then he pulls out shades that has the etheric blue, shades that drop down. Then the sisters fulfilling her coin collection, silver coin. Then in the book she sees a watermark, it's the Great Seal.
Right.
They're telling. They run to all around Philadelphia. They find about the little black book and that only presidents get and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's right.
So they're upset with Trump now and then. Why? Because he got the black book? No.
He got the book.
They ain't playing for him to get it.
And he got a big mouth.
He got to be careful with that big mouth, because he'll catch a bullet.
Let's talk about Trump just for a little minute.
He ain't gonna get no bullet.
Come on with it.
Go ahead, give her the mic.
You got it.
Give her the mic.
Yeah. You got it.
We can't hear you. I can't hear what you said.
She was just waxing philosophically.
He said that with that big mouth,
You
you gotta be careful, he's gonna catch a
You
bullet.
might catch it.
He might catch a bullet. I said, no, he's not gonna catch a bullet. What he is gonna catch is another ceremony.
Yeah. He's calling the roaches out.
Yes.
And they crawling everywhere.
Yeah, half the things that Trump says, he doesn't mean really the way people think it is. He's doing chess moves.
He is.
Meaning that he's making them expose themselves. But Trump is just a figurehead of a body of men that are behind him. They can't get rid of Trump. Trump is assigned. He's assigned.
So he wasn't elected, he was selected.
Assigned.
The impeachment is a part.
He was assigned. Let me say this to you, and I'll say this without getting into their politics and stuff, because I'm, just observe them. They touch him, they die. They want their families to leave, and their friends. Do something to Trump, and you'll find a lot of people that you didn't know that are already targeted, waiting for them to even breathe that they're going to do something to Trump. They're going to leave this planet and their families too, which is why they're not doing anything to Trump. Not that they didn't plan it, not that they don't want it to happen, not that they don't want to do it, and not that the pattern is not already in place for them to do it. However, if they do it, number one, it's not done anyway because it's only a figurehead. Number two, they just sacrifice their families. That includes themselves. That's the only reason why they didn't already do it. Other thing, after they got rid of Kennedy for doing that executive order 1111, 10, something like that, for restoration of the gold standard that was abrogated under the Organic Act of Congress 1871 after they murdered Lincoln. And they've been systematically raping the North Gate. And the Congress that Eisenhower later talked about, beware of the congressional military industrial complex. They cut off that congressional because the Congress is the one that's been doing all this stuff to you. They are the enemy, not the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve don't do anything that Congress didn't assign them to do. That's just like somebody like you hiring me to take care of your house, cut your grass, and doing all this stuff. I take the finance that you hired me for. I pay a contractor to bust in your back house to kill your children and to set your house on fire. Then I offer you to buy military stuff from me to protect you. And then when you're caught, you say, well, look what the Federal Reserve is doing. No, the congressman did it.
Right.
See, people keep forgetting the Act of Congress, 1871. They set up a secret oligarchy for themselves. Another thing that I saw in the paper today, I'm going to bring that paper just to do analysis of the article. And they say presidents are not kings. And they got a picture of Trump there because I didn't get a chance to read it, but I already know it's a criticism of Trump. Yes, the presidents operating at North America are in a king position. It's a duplication. And then the Congress and the senators are oligarchs. Under the kings, they're knighted. This is why they're all wealthy. They've been robbed, collectively, they've been robbing the people who are the nation, distinguished from their corporation operations that they've been pretending to be the nation when they're actually an occupying power. And the Federal Reserve is only the hired dog of the Congress to do stuff to you. So it looks like, well, the Federal Reserve is doing this and they're independent, private corporation, and we're trying to work this up. No, the congressmen and senators did this to you. They're a scapegoat. The same way the devil's a scapegoat for the preacher who's spending Jesus at the Bahamas with Bertha Buck who sings with the choir. You know, the devil stole the funds from Jesus' account. We got to raise more funds to replace the money that the devil stole. I just want to bring this out. Look at the multiple charities they have at North America under United States jurisdiction that raise not millions but billions every year. Don't you notice how poverty still exists? And the children are sicker, but they got new hospitals though.
Absolutely.
Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Absolutely.
They're full of it. But go ahead, Mustafa.
Real quick, oligarchy, a small group of people having control of a country or organization or institution. The ruling oligarchy of military men around the president. A country governed by an oligarchy. The English aristocratic oligarchy of the 19th century. Government by an oligarchy.
That's the feudal order of the Crown Temple Circle Church on Fleet Street, England, that actually runs the judicial branch of government here. In other words, they own the courts. The courts operating at North America under United States jurisdiction is run from London. Not from Washington, D.C., from London. Under the Circle Church of the Chancery of the barristers. This is why a lawyer by constitutional law cannot hold office in the United States. But all these congressmen and senators are lawyers, aren't they?
Vast majority, yeah.
Now you understand the feudal law operations in your face. And so the masses, of course they are. So now they're really not judges. They're clerk administrators acting as judges.
Yeah.
They are really members of the barristers' oligarchy existing for the sole purpose under the U.S. democracy, mobocracy order to overthrow the republic for the United States, which they have already done.
Clear.
Are we clear?
Clear.
Crystal.
Clear.
Your job, that's a joke, no way, right? Anyway, is to reverse this in your mind and then reverse it in those who you encounter. When they get to a certain point of vibration, they will do the rest of the work themselves. That will be a unity, because you'll be going back to the natural constitution of man, and you'll have a greater comprehension of that constitution for the United States coming from the great law of peace from your forefathers. Goes far beyond Tom Jefferson and all the guys. They were just brought in for our karmic debt. That's what you must understand.
I was thinking that same thing.
Say again?
I said I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, that's what that's about.
Yeah.
You know, if you really understand the history, the Moorish Empire didn't fall the way people think it meant, that it fell. We were not so much defeated in the sense that you call defeat by the Constantinians under the guise of Christianity. What they did is that the high adept order of the chambers of Hikuta projected and instituted the fall in order to reduce the karmic debt. In other words, we deliberately went to sleep.
Say it again, Taj, in order to reduce the karmic debt. Before that, one more time.
The karmic debt that we owe to nature
It's really ours.
was shortcut because we willingly collapsed. Not that that was the agreement of everybody, that's not what I'm saying. So even a lot of the karmic debt of the converso operation, a lot of that comes from the highest levels of wisdom. Whereas you take the pill.
We take the pill because we don't want the pill of reality. We want the pill of comfort.
Yes and no, but let me explain to what I said, where I'm coming from.
Make it plain.
It's sort of like when you really know how nature works, and you know that you yourself have been out of order, and that you have violated divine law, and the ultimate you can't escape anyway.
Right.
And so you deliver yourself up to her for judgment, rather than wait for her to catch you.
Okay, so.
You cut short the injury. In other words, mom, so grandma, remember grandma, you ate the cake that was cooling in the window and you weren't supposed to touch it, and the pie, and you went under the bed, which I remember I was doing. So my dad was drinking this stuff that I thought was water, and I was wondering why they were saying it was good, and I remember they had this bottle underneath the bed. I went under the bed, I took a cat full of that stuff, this corn liquor. I remember, I was about 5, I was asleep. They got me, they was looking all, they found me the next morning on the bed. That type of thing.
Yeah.
But you remember how, like, grandma would tell you, go out there in that tree and get that switch. Give me a good piece of branch and bring it back to me.
Oh,
Piece of branch? Oh, collectively. That was for your keisters.
That's right.
Now, after a while, you figured it out. You try to get the ones that ain't too thick. They hurt worse. But and it's like from a karmic perspective, it's according to how evolved you are. So what is it? And I'll tell you another way to look at this. When they was plotting to assassinate Yahshua, and then the priesthood delivered him to Rome, and they're going to take his life, and he says, "You don't take my life, I give it." If you understand what that really means, you'll understand what I'm saying. He had work to do too. Do you understand? In other words, you cut the karmic debt by willingly taking your punishment early.
Right. Clear.
In other words, you saving future generations suffering that will be lengthened for generations down. The rule in nature is everything that is done with consideration of 7 generations out. We're talking about call and response, how things work in nature. So if you did it wrong, rather than let it go to the other generations, you take the hangman's noose and put it around your own neck to save them. And it was a selfless act to remedy a selfish act that you did earlier. Knowing how nature works. That's how we fell. So therefore, the hybrid tribes that's what the Renaissance is all about. That's where they get the term in the Bible, to be born again. That's what the Renaissance is. When the Moors went into Europe to civilize the Europeans. After all, they helped make them.
Yes.
That was the debt that we.
After all, half these nation hybrids is when the Moors went into Europe mating with the blonde daughters. All of Sicily, Italians, they ain't nothing but Moors. That's why they dress like us. They're cool, ain't they? You ain't gonna see them with no corny sneaks on and shit. That's right. You know, you crush that shirt. I don't want that corny jacket, but give me a nice tailored suit. That's what they're telling you in that movie, True Romance. Go ahead. Give him the mic.
Wait, it's over there, she got her hand.
Oh, go ahead.
When I came across number 1 maximum law.
Talking to Mike.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Better,
Can you hear me
yeah.
now?
Thank
Can you
you.
hear me now?
Yes, now we can.
Verizon, come on.
When I came across the maximum law that stated, what no man has created, and it was talking about all the elements, land, water, ether, fire, all that. First in line is first in time. I just thought to myself, we're first in line. We were custodians of what was created. And we went out and we did some great things. We also did some things that
Now
were
you got it.
not so great.
Now you got it.
And for that, we have to go through a period of chastening.
To cut it short, look in Septuagint. Just look in the Bible, just type in the word, like do Bible search, amalgamation.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see the part where God says, but you got to put this in context. He says, look what you have wrought.
That's right.
Look what you have wrought. It's like you're like your mother. You know, when I didn't mess up, she said, you go in the house, I'll take care of this, but we're going to deal with you later. It's exactly the same thing. Because that's really what it's talking about. That's really what it's talking. They just ain't telling you the whole story.
So some of us
amalgamation is the issue.
Exactly. That's the punishment.
That is the issue. In other words, you are responsible for what you have created.
Exactly.
Take responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
What I created is
Franciscan Brotherhood. All Europeans, French, German, Germanic, the germ, this principle. The recessive gene, genetics, Dr. Moreau's island, French. Moreau is more. All right? Island, Patmos. All right? So here's Frankenstein, and put an arm on. Hey, Frankie, move your arm. Man, shit hurts. Oh, let me get this together. And then he do electricity and all this stuff. Oh, he's alive! He's alive! And Frankie going, oh man, he's on the table and stuff. You know, they got this pyramidal type room, and he's bringing electric down from the ethereal world pyramid.
That's right. That's right.
So Frankie gets up and everything. And says, oh, man. What, Frankie? Frank goes,
Oh,
I got this, right? While Frankie started checking out Sister Keisha. Hey, girl, you got it going on. No, Frankie, you can't do that now. Frankie said, well, I mean, what's up? you know, like the Addams family type thing. Adam,
You rang.
Addams family.
Yeah.
So when Frankie got his clear his cars up, we might date. So now trying to control Frankie. Frankie said, "Hey man, I can dance now." So Frankie writing shit. So Frank burns your books and he covers your shit up and makes his own shit. Well, you mad? Well, you gotta take responsibility. Don't get mad.
Exactly. That's true. Exactly.
Take responsibility for what you wrought. So have you cut it short? Renaissance, they must be born again. 12th century, on up, it's actually earlier, they'll say 12th, 16th century. The Renaissance is French, it means to be born again. So now you have all your old cathedrals in your, trace it back, they didn't build them, Moors built them. Oldest universities in the world, Morocco. All your old cathedrals in England, Germany, etc., and those castles, Moors built them. Responsibility. Are we clear?
Clear.
So the indigenous people of England are really what? The Moors, the Picts, and the Dogs. All of those are Moors. That's why all of their family crests got Moors in them. And you'll see the Pope's crest, and you'll have what? Who do you see in there? I ain't gonna tell you what you need to do some research. You'll got a Moor right there as the king.
Elizabeth.
In the crest of the Pope.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Of course you do, but people see and they don't see.
and the first queen of Hawaii.
They see and they don't see, because their concept of reconstructed history is what they're going by. So things that are obvious, they don't see. Just like the Wizard of Oz, the lion ain't got no heart. Judah, or what you call Judah. Tribe of Judah. He punked out. You know, he's out there scaring everybody and talking shit. So Dorothy's minding her business going, with a Gucci bag and shit. And he jumps out, right? She's like, oh, it's scaring me. And he's going, that's right, because I'm the king of the forest. Shit. Right? And then all of a sudden he starts crying and she says, well, damn, what's wrong? You're standing on my tail. You know, point over, he's a punk talking big chuck. That represents us. Yellow brick road is your zodiac. Tin Man is industry. Right? Straw Man is after they close the free man is zero. Emerald City is your star. You understand?
Yeah.
Dorothy is the matriarchy. The really silver slippers is the energy of the moon, but they changed it to the red ruby slippers, but it's really silver slippers. Then the house falling from the ethers on the bed of witch, right? The houses, zodiac houses. And then there's stock curls up. Then at the end, they tell you, Dorothy, you're home, you just bumped your head. It's still you. That's a karmic debt response, creation. So they're telling you, so you can't say they didn't tell you.
Yeah.
And then the nemesis is what? Flying monkeys. Negro Yabera Arebo, Black Chimpanzee Monkey, Charles Darwin. I think I turned this down. Excuse me just a minute. I gotta answer this. I'll call you back, brother. I'm having class. I apologize.
Okay.
All right, peace. I thought I turned this down. Apologize. So they'll like in with Will Smith, right? Wild Wild West, the spider craft, right?
Right.
The guy's in a spider apparatus on his flying thing, right?
Right.
And then he backs Will Smith up to the door, and he says, "You like a handsome black or more."
Yeah, you did say that.
Rich, and there's water beneath, and he says, and he's looking at his medallion and say, "Damn, what's this more thing?"
I did see that.
They're telling you on multiple levels. Then with Robin Hood, Morgan Freeman, right? Then with Sidney Poitier with the bell. They tell you. See, so now, so the karmic debt's not there, is it?
Even in Doctor Strange.
Maleficent,
Same thing.
the new movie.
The Matrix,
He called him Mortal.
True Lies with Anthony Hopkins.
The Lone Ranger.
Yeah, long stranger. Yeah. But anyway, not to get into that, but the deal of it is, back to the point. The reason why the Europeans claim to be Americans is so that you can forget that they're occupiers. But the other issue that you forget is that they're really stealing your birthright. Are we clear? And so the contortions is the reconstructed history, and it's called period of Reconstruction. And of course the Civil War, which is really a commercial mercenary war. It's not a civil war. Are we clear?
Clear.
But they present it as civil war to make it seem like Americans are fighting Americans. No, it's Europeans fighting Americans. The Spanish-American War, another fraud. Do you understand? Spanish is a code word that they made up after the fall of the Moors to cover up Moorish history. There's no such thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You understand? French-American War. All of those are Inquisition operations. All of them. You see? So they'll present, say, the Civil War, they call it Civil War, it's private commercial mercenary war. And then they'll tell people that they're fighting to liberate slavery. Yes and no, not the way you think it is, though, because they're the slave. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the concept is to the people who are suffering under Reconstructed history. As soon as they think slave, they think about the Asiatics of the indigenous people being enslaved by Europeans. And that's far distinct from the truth. Most of the slaves are Europeans. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And you were just defeated and overthrown. Not that some of our people weren't held to servitude. They're not slaves, they were bound free men held to servitude. Only Europeans are slaves. That's not necessarily negative, but it must be understood. Anyway, we would like over time, like really. But anyway, I want to thank you all for coming out here to the House of Reawakening Minds. I want you to understand sincerely that a lot of work that we're doing is actually decolonization.
Islam.
It's really mental cleansing.
Islam.
Absolutely.
Much of it you have to do. We got to get out of looking for someone else to do what you must do. It is you yourself, as single unit energies, that must render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That means all these institutions that you believe that were your government, get over yourself. They weren't your government. They were governing over you, but they're not your government. You're under occupation. You must come out of it without hate. And so you must learn to love instead of hate. Because part of it is your karmic lesson. Are we clear?
Clear.
Also recognize that a lot of this crap that they keep talking about disclosure, people keep looking out. You need to look in. Some of the things that you think is out, always been here. Deals as the veil's being pulled off of you, you will see more colors and more things. It's not that those things appear, it's that you were blind. Don't confuse the two.
Absolutely.
Are we clear?
Absolutely.
Are we clear?
That's clear.
Now, again, like I said earlier, some are here to help fix. Some have already advanced out and agreed to come back to help. Others came back to help, got contaminated, and joined the dirt. So these things must be cleared up. On a lower level, listen to what I'm saying to you, because you got to get this. Because this is what you're shown to see, but understand it's smaller than that. Donald Trump represents a lower level of cleansing.
Check.
He's assigned, clear.
Clear.
He has to do what he's doing whether he likes to do it or not. Even if he intends to do, he's going to have to do because they're going to try to get rid of him if he doesn't. Even if he entered the realm with an intent of deceit. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? When they get finished attacking him and his family, he will be sincerely doing what he's doing. And that is helping to clean this mess up.
And restore the republic.
And if they want to survive economically and viable in this world, they want the world to trade with them and more, and they don't want Babylon to burn and the harlot ship to sink, he's going to have to get rid of the dirt. Are we clear?
Clear.
Any old trade agreements that they had are already dead, so he has to make new trade agreements or they will have none whatsoever. Because no one wants to deal with them anymore. Are we clear?
Clear.
Meanwhile, you who are the real people of the land, you're going to have to learn government, and you're going to have to learn self-discipline, and you're going to have to be honorable, because the world is going to start dealing through you, or they're not going to deal at all. Meanwhile, many of those who have been used to controlling the power logically, not necessarily fairly, don't want to give it up. So that's the resistance that you see. However, they're going to be moved out of the way one way or the other. They're wise to get on board to help fix this thing or die. They're given a chance, and this is their last chance. Are we clear?
Clear.
But this is also the last chance for these Asiatics who've been a part of this corruption. They're given a chance too for redemption. They can choose to do right because it is right to do. And the greatest lesson that I can present to all of us is this: do that which is right for unselfish means and unselfish intent. Then nature will work with you. If you have selfishness in it, she will move you out of the way.
Absolutely.
So we have to learn to know of our lower self, start doing that shadow work, start suppressing it, and doing right because it's right, not because you're looking for a brownie cookie. If you want to help you, help someone else. And everything you do, do with goodwill. And with that, I'll say thank you. Peace, Arena, Ed.
Before you sign out, House of Reawakening Minds would like to help with that inner work. On December the 21st, 2019, if you are in the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Virginia, what is the area around here? Baltimore area. December 21st, House of Reawakening Mind will be hosting the 2020 Resolution Alignment, Road to Self-Mastery, featuring none other than Dr. Nailia L., who will go over the importance of Reiki, the benefits and importance of Reiki. Also, we have Troja, Irby Morgan will have Manifesting Your Destiny, Your Dreams. We have David Levy Bay, Herbal Therapy, Crystal John, Energy Healing and Crystals, as well as Brother Hassan Gazelle Bay, Astrology, and none other than the main lecturer, Brother Abdullah El Talib Mosey Bey, who we talk about the epistemology and etymology of connecting yourself back to the moon cycle. As stated, this will be December 21st, 2019, from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. and extended to 7 p.m. with vendors. You will have meet and greets with the vendors, as well as we have food selection as well. The cost to attend is 25 notes at the door and online. You can register online through the Eventbrite at 2020resolutionalignment.eventbrite.com. It will be housed at House of Reawakening Minds at 602 Vanderveer Avenue, Wilmington, Delaware, 19802. Hosted by yours truly, Tamara L.
Now, remember, we're supposed to be planning an event
I got you.
coming up.
Yes. We have
an
another
important
one.
event?
Yes, we made that announcement.
All
We
right.
made that announcement. We're going to work on the
March 20th, 21st.
March 20th, 21st.
Mhm.
We have Moorish Summit,
Metaphysics.
Metaphysics, and celebration of none other than Dr. Grand Sheik's 65th solar return.
Dr. Grand Sheik did
Yes, that too. It's 11 o'clock. We're going to say it for everybody
Get
now.
everybody.
Dr. Nayelia L. Dr. Nayelia L. 65th solar return.
How old is? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
6'5". She's gonna
Yeah, we're gonna have a
she's
good
gonna
time.
be master 11.
We're
So
gonna have a good time.
we're gonna have a great time.
Yeah.
That information will be posted on Sunday, where you can go to Eventbrite as well.
Right.
And
It will not be
sign
here.
up. We're also working on the hotel selection so you can make your reservations. It's gonna be a grand time, March the 20th and the 21st. So all the information will be posted on the Facebook as well as where we can post it.
Yes.
It'll be out there.
And those of you who are listening, remember the House of Reawakening Minds here to support you, support the house. Because, you know, most people who know this stuff will never get into anything controversial that helps humanity. That's the truth.
Wow.
You know, and wish there were more, but fortunately or unfortunately, however you may look at it, there are a lot of people know, a lot of people are not telling. And so I appreciate Dr. Naila for sacrificing what a lot of people talk about big time fiat, to be honest with herself and to be honorable and give up a lot of the worldly goods to see that there's a platform for truth to come out. And truth is always controversial, because remember, amongst liars, truth is ugly. Truth is treated like an enemy.
Yeah.
You know, so, and it's not, you know, for me, because I'm not worthy, but for the little bit I have, I'll try to help. But I recognize good when I see it. You know, but anyway, support the House of Reawakening Minds is here to support you. Etc. Any other announcements?
Next week, we'll have Brother Abdullah.
Upcoming Friday, we have Brother Abdullah. Actually, it'll be a tag team, I found out.
Okay.
It's gonna be Brother Abdullah Bay as well as Shem Malachi Bay. Will both be featuring at the House of Reawakening Minds this Friday coming up. So tune in, share, please come back, support. You know, thank you.
Right on.